Good evening and welcome to the Northern Region Advisory Council meeting. Today is November 10th, 2021, and it is 6 o'clock. This meeting is being held in person in the Weber County Commission Chamber in Ogden, Utah, as well as being streamed live on YouTube. This is a public forum allowing you to express your opinions and proposals on the management of wildlife in our state. The RAC considers your ideas, opinions, and proposals and reports them to the Wildlife Board. The Wildlife Board, not the RAC, is charged with setting wildlife policy for our state. We all have our ideas and opinions about what is best for Utah's wildlife, and we wish to express and we approach this with tremendous emotion and passion. I encourage all of you and who wish to express their opinion to do so. However, I ask that we respect opposing views on the issues being discussed. I would appreciate that the audience keep their emotions in check, allowing all individuals to freely express their opinions. Appropriate conduct will provide smooth meeting flow, allowing the RAC to listen, digest, and address all concerns, opinions, and proposals offered for consideration. Rude comments, booing, yelling, hooting, or snickering from the audience while individual comments are being offered will not be tolerated. If inappropriate behavior persists, the offender may be asked to leave the meeting. We'd like to begin by welcoming our RAC members. And I want to go ahead and start with those who are here in person. And we'll start down on the end with Brad.
Brad Buchanan, representing Sportsman.
Paul Chase, Forest Service, out of Logan.
Kevin McLeod, at large, West Haven.
Mike Lauder, Sportsman's rep, Hooper.
All right. Let's go with those who are attending virtually. We'll start with Jamie.
Hi there, I'm Jamie Butler. I'm representing non-consumptive users, and I'm visiting you from my trailer in Wellsville, Utah.
Nice.
Hi.
All right. Hello, we'll go with Randy.
Randy Hutchison, Ogden, Utah, at large.
All right. Emily.
Emily Genso with the BLM out of Salt Lake.
Thank you. Nikki.
Nikki Wayman, representing non-consumptive users from Ogden.
Thank you. And last but not least, Matthew.
Matt Clark, Ogden at large.
All right. We have a few council members who are being excused tonight. Darren Perry, David Earl, Ryan Brown, Junior Goring, and Casey Snyder have all asked to be excused. Just a note for everyone, Jamie Butler will also need to leave the meeting early to attend to some of her professional duties. So with that, I'd also like to welcome the DWR staff that is here. And they'll be here for questions and to be able to explain or clarify anything. And so we have Blair Stringham, the Migratory Bird Program Coordinator, Lindy Varney, Wildlife Licensing Coordinator, Covey Jones, Big Game Coordinator, Chad Wilson, Public Wildlife and Private Lands Coordinator, and numerous regional employees are attending in person or watching online that can help us answer any questions if needed. Most importantly, we want to welcome those who are here in the meeting today, and also those who are attending by watching us on YouTube. Those that are attending in person will have the opportunity to provide comments regarding any agenda item. If you wish to make a comment, you must fill out a comment card. And prior to coming forward, and those comment cards are in the back. If you get those, you can bring them up and we'll have you hand them to Jody on the end and she'll pass them forward. And then according to as we receive those cards is when we'll call for your comments. Let's see. And then the public that are watching on YouTube will not be able to provide live comments during the meeting. However, the presentations presented were provided for those to view online, and the public was able to provide comments to the RAC members for this meeting that we all received. And help me out here, Ben. What am I missing? We're going to, at this time,
Do the board update?
the board, do we need to call this meeting to order?
Oh, just do the meeting and agenda.
Yes. Should we do
Agenda
that?
minutes?
Yes.
You're good.
So I'd like to, as we begin, call for an approval of both the agenda and the minutes. Is there anyone that would like to propose that?
This is Matt Clark. I would propose that we accept the meeting minutes and the agenda.
Okay.
Randy Hutchison, I'll second it.
All right, so we have a motion to accept the agenda and the meeting minutes by Matt and a second by Randy. All those who are in favor, if you'd please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
All right. I think that's unanimous. All right, at this time, I'm going to, Ben is going to help us with both of our next two agenda items. First, a Wildlife Board meeting update, and then he'll go also into the DWR regional update.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Chair. For those who are watching online and in person, I'm Ben Nadolski. I'm the Northern Region Supervisor. Summary of motions for the last Wildlife Board meeting at the end of September. After approving agenda and minutes, the topic was once-in-a-lifetime species recommendations. There was some discussion about conflicts between bighorn sheep hunters and rifle deer hunters. And so there was a motion to reduce the season dates on the Pine Valley Virgin River and Pine Valley Beaver Dam Desert Bighorn sheep hunts to begin after the rifle deer hunt ends. That motion failed 3-2. And then the motion to approve the recommendations as presented passed unanimously after that. The fishing recommendations were next. You'll recall there were some recommendations to change regulations at Bear Lake. That was presented and passed as presented unanimously. Followed by that were three motions in a row to pass, to accept the conservation permit audit as presented, as well as the annual report and permit allocations, and all three of those motions passed unanimously. To wrap up the meeting, they did schedule RAC and board meeting dates for 2022. So after a little bit of snark from Stacy Coons, they passed that unanimously as well. So finish on a high note, and that's the update, Mr. Chair.
All right. You want to give us at the same time, our regional
Yep, that'd be
update
great.
as well?
Sure. Okay, I'll let the tech crew pull up the slides, and while they're doing that, I'll just mention that something that we're going to be doing just a little bit new is we're going to be given just a few slides for our regional updates. These slides will feed into the update for the Wildlife Board for the director to give for the agency-wide, statewide updates.
All right. We also want to call attention, we have a celebrity in the room. We have one of our Wildlife Board members is also here, Bryce Thurgood from the Wildlife Board, and we want to recognize him and thank him for attending. Raise your hand, Bryce. There you go.
Well, he looks mad at you now. Okay, so I'll just give the Northern Region update. I just have basically a slide for each section, mostly. So for the first slide, we'll just quickly, a quick update for the aquatic section. Those employees are kind of wrapping up field season, but one highlight they wanted to share was we did a fall gill netting survey at Bear Lake. Cutthroat trout are doing fantastic up at Bear Lake. Our fisheries manager, Chris Penny, tells me the past 4 years were the highest on record. So things are looking up for Bear Lake cutthroat trout. Average length was 17 inches and average weight was 1.5 pounds. And of course, everybody wants to know for lake trout too. So 22-inch average for lake trout and 5.5 pounds for 5.5 pound average for lake trout as well. So if you're looking to get in some fishing this fall and into the colder temps, Bear Lake's a great place to go. Next slide. For the law enforcement section, I just titled the slide K9 Cruise, but we've got a K9. His name's Cruz. He cruises around with Officer Matt Burgess. Cruz has been really helpful in a lot of poaching investigations and has just become a really helpful tool. But our law enforcement section has really been stepping up and helping with public safety deployments with Cruz. And we've had a few instances recently where Cruz and Officer Burgess were able to use this new tool to help, I think, save lives. I won't get into the details, but I think those are private for the folks that were involved, but I think it's important to draw attention to some of the things maybe we don't often talk about with the division. And K9 Crews is out there doing a bunch of work with Officer Burgess, and we're really proud of the work they do and the lives that they save and the public safety that they help support. Next slide. And the Great Salt Lake. Jamie, if you're able to hear me, I'll be punting to you here in a minute when we get to the microbial lights, if you're okay with that. If anybody's watching the news, pay attention to the drought, of course. We hit a historic low elevation at the Great Salt Lake on October 18th of 4,190.2 feet. It hit international news as well. Our current elevation is just a tick above that. And we're all very concerned about those water elevations, but so far total brine shrimp harvest is almost 16 million pounds. It's really close to what it was this same date last year. So we're hoping that productivity continues. But when we talk about low water levels, a lot of people ask, well, what does that impact have on the Great Salt Lake? And really what it comes down to biologically is exposing these microbialites. It's a pretty technical explanation. So we've got a RAC member, actually. I don't know if any of you have ever tried to explain something that's really technical in front of a technical professional. It's not something I care to do. So Jamie, if you want to give it a shot, I'd love to let you use the big words.
Yeah, and I don't think we need to get too technical. I think microbialites are they're like the grungy cousin to a coral reef, and they're super highly productive. They're about 30% of the primary productivity in Great Salt Lake. So when you think about the shrimp and the flies and all of the birds that rely on those, they're taking a lot of sunlight and producing a lot of biomass for shrimp and flies, and of course, like all of our beloved birds that we hunt and we look at and we photograph out at the lake. And I think if I were to characterize this year as anything, it would be the year of the microbialite, because now everybody knows about microbialites, and we and know the word microbialite or grungy cousin to the reef. And we also understand it doesn't just have to do with like salt content going up, that this exposure at really low lake level is really important. So and I'll just shout on November 17th, if you're like really stoked on learning more about microbialites or grungy reefs, shout me out and I'll send you a link to a webinar where we'll be talking to the Utah Geological Survey and other scientists. Thank you,
Thanks,
Ben.
yeah. I told everybody here, you're smarter than me, so I'll defer to you, and you proved it. But actually, it's
a harder thing, but
our biologist actually sent me a link on how to pronounce microbialites, so that shows you where I'm at. No, it's a hugely important issue, and that's why I keep talking about it and asking Jamie to explain it, because that's really what it comes down to. It's a trophic kind of cascade, I guess, if we're going to start to use terms from back in school, right? And so it's important that we inundate those microbialites so that we can get that primary productivity into the system, and that higher trophic levels can take advantage of those resources. So thank you, Jamie. Next slide. Our habitat team, we've got a couple upcoming retirements I just wanted to share with everybody. On the top is Scott Walker. He's our current regional habitat manager. He's announced his retirement. He'll be working till about the middle of December. And this is a rare picture of him with a huge smile holding a crappie. But we're going to miss Scott a ton. He's been around the division for a long time, and he is a habitat resource expert. There's no question about it. And we love Scott and are going to miss him, and we'll be in the process of replacing him or trying to find a replacement for his years of knowledge in the new year. At the same time, we're also going to be losing Pam Kramer, who has been in the northern region for a lot of years as well. It's really hard to find a picture of Pam Kramer and not working. Like when she works, she doesn't like lift her face up to show her face for the camera. She just keeps on working. So I got this picture of her transplanting some beavers. Hopefully a lot of you guys know who Pam Kramer is by the work that she's done, but she's just been a really silent producer for a lot of years and a mainstay in the northern region who is also taking a wealth of knowledge with her into retirement at the end of the year as well. So we'll have some new faces in the habitat section in the new year, but we still have a couple really young go-getters that are working their tails off out in the primarily in the WMAs right now. We've got a crew that's going in the Hennifer Echo fire rehab area. You might recall back in 2020, we had a burn there that really closed a large portion of the Hennifer Echo wildlife management area right in the middle of the hunt. It started in Fire Canyon, go figure. But we've been working on a pretty large scale surface scalping project there that's going to help with fire rehab. And we're doing the same thing in a number of other WMAs across the state. Hats off to Nate Long and Steve Hunt and Chase for their work keeping those machines going and keeping the habitat in better shape. So next slide. The deer hunt opener. For each of the deer hunt openers, hopefully some of you came through a check station. We ran 2 check stations, one in Box Elder County and one at Mountain Green. The check station at Box Elder, we more than doubled what we saw last year. We had quite a productive opener. We had about an even mix of young and mature bucks. So quite a few happy hunters coming out opening weekend. Good job to our wildlife biologists for the work they did there. But we're also getting a lot of reports from hunters, from our own staff, from our officers that are really encouraging. Hunters, even those that aren't harvesting, are still seeing quite a few young bucks in a lot of the units up here. So that's encouraging news. At the Mountain Green check station, we hadn't run that one last year, but we were up, I think, 20% from 2 years ago when we did last run that check station. So hopefully this is an encouraging sign for the future. Next slide. It's capture season coming up. So I just want to take this opportunity to invite RAC members and board members, if you're watching, if you guys want to get out, get to know our staff, rub elbows in the field. That time of year is here. We'll be starting with, we've got some mountain goat captures that are going to start off with, I think, Willard and Uinta mountain areas, but those are probably not the funnest because they're not going to be shuttling animals back and forth. They'll just be putting collars on in place where they're captured. But for the cached deer on November 29th, of course, conditions permitting, that'll be when we start our deer captures. It's a great one to have our partners, RAC members and board members. If you guys want to participate, let me know. We'd love to have you. It's a really good learning experience and a good opportunity to get to know our staff. One face that you won't see there this coming year will be Eric Anderson. We lost him to Idaho. He's had family ties to Idaho for a lot of years, came to us from Idaho, and his family really needed to get back home. And so he accepted a position working in Pocatello. And so we'll be refilling our biologist in his district. Next. And that's all I have. So if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them or defer to the experts in the room that can.
Ben, I've got a question.
Sure.
On Bear Lake, are they going to continue to, in those fish, those cutthroat that come through the hatchery, are they going to continue to clip the adipose fin so that we know if we're catching a native or
With the new regulation, I don't know if we're going to be doing the clip or not, actually. I wish we had a fish guy here. I'll get you an answer to that, but my guess is probably not, unless we're trying to evaluate natural versus stock reproduction still. It's possible, but I don't know for sure. Can I get an answer to you after?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
Just a comment, not a question. I just want to wish Scott Walker and Pamela Kramer the best. I've had the opportunity to work with them for probably my whole career, 15, 18 years. So they've been wonderful assets to the Division of Wildlife and always did a wonderful job with habitat, with working with sportsmen. Kudos to both of them. Wish them nothing but the best.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate that. I'll pass it along too if they're not watching already.
Ben, this is Matt Clark. I've got a question about the swan hunt. Can you give us an update on how that's going, particularly if we're getting any trumpeters taken?
Yeah, we've got Blair in the room. I know he sent out an email today with an update of 9 harvested, but we did have a couple come into the office. Blair, are you listening, or is Covey just that funny? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you might as well just stay there anyway, since you're coming right up anyway. But can you give us an update in real time on the trumpeter harvest?
Yeah, so as of today, we harvested 9 trumpeters. About half of those have been coming from public shooting grounds. The rest of them are from around the Great Salt Lake. But there are a fair number of trumpeters out there right now, so we've been trying to encourage people to not shoot them if at all possible. So.
Thanks, Blair. After your email went out today and with the official update, we had a couple more come in before we closed. But so.
And the quota is 20, is that right?
Yep. Yeah. So our quota is 20 birds. And it sounds like we may be above that so we'll probably be sending an email out to hunters probably the next day or two, letting them know that we're approaching the quota and to get out there and try to shoot birds that aren't trumpeters. So.
Thanks, Blair. I got a message from our fish biologist on your question. And it makes sense. I saw the manager of the Camas hatchery in the office today. So they did discuss it today. They're still trying to decide if they're going to be doing the fin clips or not, but they'll know here in about a month if that's going to happen. It's quite a bit of work to process that many fish. It takes a lot of manpower. So we'll see if they get it done or if they decide to do it.
All right, do we have any other questions about the regional update before we move on the agenda? Okay, we're going to go to agenda number 5, which is the Waterfowl Recommendations for 2022 and 2024. We have Blair Stringham, our migratory bird program coordinator here. I want to go over just so people know what the procedure will go as follows. I will ask for questions from members of the RAC who are here that are present. And then once their questions, if it's all right, then I'll ask for questions for members of RAC who are here joining us virtually. After we've heard those, we're done asking questions, we'll then go into the comment period. We will then follow the same. We'll ask comments from the RAC members who are here. I understand that there'll probably be a little bit of mixing, but we're just to try to avoid confusion. We'll ask for comments from those who are here, and then for those who are joining us virtually. After those comments, we'll then open the time for members of the public who have joined us to make comments, and we will call you up according to the comment cards. Again, if you got here late, if you would like to make a comment, please fill out a card that's in the back and bring it up to Jody here on my right. Following all the comments and discussion, we'll then at that time entertain motions. So with that, we'll go ahead and invite Blair to please come forward. Again, everyone know that everyone's had the opportunity. Oh, I left the part out. Before we vote, we'll then hear from our regional supervisor. He'll give us an update on what the percentage or what the public's feedback was on each agenda item. So now with that, everyone's had the opportunity to watch those who are on the RAC and public have already had the opportunity to watch the presentation, so they won't be going. We won't be showing any of them. We'll just be here. Blair's here to answer questions or field any other comments. So this time, Blair's up there. Do we have any questions from, did I forget anything? You want to do that right now?
Whatever you want to do. Sorry, go ahead.
I think we'll do that
Okay.
after, right? So
Sure.
we'll go ahead as members of the RAC who are here present at this time. Do you have any questions for Blair concerning this? He's off. I have a few, but I'm going to allow those who are joining us virtually now, RAC members. Are there any questions that you have for Blair concerning these recommendations? Okay. I had the opportunity to watch the Central RAC last night, and there was a lot of questions concerning the number of trumpeter swans, similar to what Matt asked, what the numbers were. And one of the comments that came up was the possibility of to try to avoid any people who are targeting trumpeters to possibly put a waiting period on someone who was to take a trumpeter swan. Do you feel like that would help in any way to maybe distract people from, and maybe pay a little more attention to what type of swan they're shooting?
I think it would for the honest people. I guess one of our main concerns, because we did explore that option, I guess one of the concerns we did have is that people would probably just not have their swans checked. There are some people that already are doing that just because of the inconvenience of having them to come into our office to have them checked. And so we were a little concerned that that might become more prevalent. If people shoot trumpeters, they just wouldn't bring their birds in to be measured. But I mean, it certainly would probably deter a lot of people from doing it as well. So.
And who determines the number of trumpeters that can be taken in Utah? I know Montana, for instance, I think it's just a swan hunt. Is there a possibility that we could do that here where we just have a swan hunt and we don't have to worry about the two?
Yeah, so it varies from state to state. Like I say, Montana, they're able to shoot as many trumpeters. There's no quota up there. And they do a voluntary bill measurement card to check in their swans. Us in Nevada do have a quota. And part of that was because when they first started putting all this together about 20 years ago with a lawsuit that went through and an EA, the idea was that at some point trumpeter swans would start migrating through Utah again, specifically from that greater Yellowstone area where we're concerned about trumpeter swans. And so they wanted to try to reduce trumpeter harvest down here just in case those birds started migrating. What we've seen the last couple of years is we have seen a lot more trumpeters coming through Utah for whatever reason. But through our, every time someone shoots a trumpeter, we try to collect a feather sample from them. And what we can do is go back and look at that feather, look at the elements that containing within that feather. And it tells us where that bird actually molted its feathers in the summer and started growing those feathers. And from that, we've been able to identify that a lot of them are coming from Alaska, which is a group of the tens of thousands of trumpeter swans that we're really not concerned with. And so there is the potential that at some point we could go to more of a Montana system and not have a quota. But currently the Fish and Wildlife Service has set it at 20, and we're tied into that for the current time being. And there's not really a lot of flexibility at this point.
So Blair, this is Matt Clark, and you're saying that this is set by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service currently?
Yep. Yeah, so it's part of a flyway management plan and supported by the Fish and Wildlife Service. We did an analysis a couple of years ago looking at the current population level of those greater Yellowstone birds and felt comfortable that if we were to harvest 20 of them in Utah every year, there still wouldn't be any biological population level effects. And so that's why it's at 20 right now. It may be revisited in the future. And if we find that none of those birds are getting shot in Utah, then we may be able to expand opportunities at that point. But currently, I guess
current data right now is that most of them are coming from Alaska, the ones that you're actually testing.
Yep. That's what we're finding, which is good news. It means that there's even a lower probability that we're impacting swan populations in that greater Yellowstone area.
So if waterfowl hunters of Utah wanted to see those numbers go up, how do you reach out to almost seems like the feds are almost out of touch, or well, how do we have input with them, or do they have biologists that are based here that look at those things, or how do you approach possibly raising those numbers?
Yeah, so the flyway process is the first step that we use. That's a state-run process, but it's where we engage quite heavily with Fish and Wildlife Service to try to come up with joint recommendations that both groups of state agencies and Fish and Wildlife Service will support. They do have a comment period as well. It's about a 60-day comment period that they put all the waterfowl regulations through each year. And so there's potential for the public to comment at that level as well. It's a lot harder, though, to move the regulation pendulum with the Fish and Wildlife Service than it is through the state agencies. And so, I mean, if there's a lot of interest in Utah, we can start pushing that from the flyway level. But generally, unless you have a lot of data to support a decision, the Fish and Wildlife Service isn't willing to listen to a lot of those changes.
Would it be beneficial as if our RAC were to make a motion suggestion to you or to our state to look more into that and pursue that more? Is that something that could be done, or is that already being done?
Yeah, so it's already being done somewhat at my level, and so I go to the flyway meetings each year, and I try to make things the best I can in Utah. A few years ago, we were able to increase the quota and the number of tags in the state, and so that was the direct benefit of the state engaging with Fish and Wildlife Service. If the RAC wanted to make a motion and say, specifically to DWR to start investigating this and try to increase the quota or something like that, it's something that we could start pushing more at the state level through the flyway process and as we engage with Fish and Wildlife Service. I don't know if it would carry as much weight if the specifically to the Fish and Wildlife Service to say this is what we want to do and we're the Northern Region RAC, they would probably defer back to us again. So
The reason I asked that is, as you mentioned before, you raised the permit. So we know that, is it 2 years ago that we upped the number of swans that could be killed in Utah? So we have more people in the field, and I think that's directly affected why there's more trumpeters being killed, is there are a lot more people with permits out in the field. And so obviously we have a higher chance of meeting that. And so because we have more in the field and yet we haven't moved that trumpeter number, feels like we're closing the season a lot earlier because we're hitting that quota, and there's a lot of people that aren't able to fill their tags because the seasons are closing. So
Yeah.
I think that's would be beneficial, if the biology, says that there's enough birds that we could do that. And so
Yeah.
that's the reason for my questions.
Yeah, then maybe a little bit of background on that. So up until that point, about 3 years ago, we were averaging about one trumpeter swan for every 800 hunters. And so the same year that we increased the quota, we also allowed people to hunt at public shooting grounds. And we have seen that there have been increased trumpeters taken at public shooting grounds. But that same year, the swans did something they've never done before, and we just had a lot of trumpeters show up in Utah. And so we harvested more than we ever had. I think up until that point, the most we'd ever shot was 7. And so we anticipated, because we were averaging about 4 to 5, so we were anticipating maybe having 6. And that bumped up greatly after those swans started coming to Utah. And we've seen that the last couple of years, is there's just more and more trumpeter swans in the marshes of Utah for whatever reason. And it all kind of happened at the exact same time.
So probably not an issue so much they're being targeted. We've opened more areas up. We've allowed more hunters to be out there, and that's a result of that.
Yeah.
We're seeing more done.
Yeah, we definitely, the trend wouldn't have suggested that we would have hit the quota at all. And in fact, we were anticipating being well below the quota every year. But it was kind of the perfect storm. And for some reason, we continue to see more trumpeter swans every year.
So Blair, this is Matt Clark again. This is a frustration for me as a swan hunter. I was hunting swans 20 years ago. The season never closed, but now it's like a 2 or 3 week season. And so I'm wondering if that pressure is causing people to be less discriminating, hoping to fill their tag before the season closed, rather than knowing they've got the whole season to wait for, a tundra swan to come by.
Yeah, part of what's happened is up until a couple of years ago, you could hold out for a trumpeter swan, but the chances of seeing one was almost 0. But now there's particularly public shooting grounds. If you go to public shooting grounds and hunt 10 days, you're likely to see a trumpeter. So there's people that are just encountering more in the field who know they're trumpeters and are targeting them. And there's quite a few that just don't know, and they're just shooting the first white bird that comes through. And unfortunately, there's more out there, so they happen to be more trumpeters being shot.
So when you're looking at the distribution, is it mostly public shooting grounds, or are they dispersed over most of the hunting area?
And most of the trumpeters tend to be kind of around that Bear River Refuge area. About 30% of them last year were from public shooting grounds. We did have quite a few from the Bear River Refuge, which has been where people could hunt for many, many years now. We always have a few shot from Ogden Bay, sometimes down by the Salt Lake Airport. Really kind of all over the place. But a big percentage of them are coming from public shooting grounds.
Is the early season closures we've had these last several years, what impact is that having on the tundra swan populations, if any?
So we've seen tundra swan populations be relatively stable for about the last 50 years. We feel like there's a lot of harvest potential for tundra swans above and beyond where we currently are with permits. Certainly, if we close the season early, there's probably fewer tundra swans being shot. But we haven't really seen the population go up or down because of that. It's largely just environmental conditions from year to year that's driving increases or decreases.
Okay, I had one other question, and this isn't concerning swans, but as far as the dark geese, we're looking at raising the number by 1, correct?
Yep.
Biology, everything says that's good. That shouldn't have any effect on it.
Yeah. So we've been seeing Canada goose populations grow both within the state and across the flyway. We really have very few concerns that 5 goose bag will increase. But even the harvest of Canada geese, shooting 3, 4, 5 geese is usually pretty difficult for most hunters. So there'll be hunters out there that will be able to achieve that 5 bird bag consistently, but most people probably won't ever shoot 5 geese in their lifetimes anyways. So.
He's saying me shoot out there. I shoot at them. Anyway, any other questions before we look for comments? All right. Any comments from members of the RAC, both present and virtually? It seems to be going smooth. I think we just as you asked. Any comments? Okay, we got it.
On the swans, just a comment. I know hunters that are targeting those trumpeters, and they're not going to change unless there's some kind of an action. So unless we come up with some system of, you can educate, you can ask, but they really don't care. And if they reach the quota and it ends the swan season, they don't care about the next guy. So unless there's a real way to penalize them or do something that might deter them from shooting them, they're going to.
There's no more comments from members of the RAC. We didn't have any comments from the public. Is there anyone out there that would like to bring one forward? All right, we'll turn some time over to Ben right now to share with us how the comment period, what we heard from the public.
Okay. Well, the public was kind of quiet on the online responses as well. Usually we've got kind of a narrative that some of the public commenters will provide, and I'll go through and kind of pick out the themes from that, but we didn't have really any of that for this item. We will later, of course. So we had 9 total votes. 4 were strongly, the question was which best describes your position regarding the proposed waterfowl hunting changes. 4 strongly agree, 1 somewhat agreed, 3 neither agreed or disagree, 1 somewhat disagreed, and 0 disagreed or strongly disagreed. That's it.
Okay, with that, I invite the RAC members to, if there's any discussion, and we could entertain a motion at this time.
This is Matt Clark. I'd be willing to put forth a motion to accept the presentation as presented with the caveat that we look into ways to limit the tundra swan harvest non-punitively, meaning you're just going to force them into not checking the swans. It sounds like there might be some ground to gain by limiting where hunting is allowed if a significant percentage of the tundra swans are being taken in certain areas. But overall, again, I would make a motion that we accept the presentation as presented, but look into in the future ways we could limit tundra swan harvest.
Okay, so I've got a motion from Matt to accept the proposal as presented with the caveat or inviting the division to find ways to limit the number of trumpeter swans being taken each year. Does that sound correct?
Yes.
Do we have a second with that motion?
I'd second that.
So we have a motion from Matt and a second from Randy. All right, any discussion on the motion? All right, we're going to call for a vote. I think it's going to be easier to go individually. You think on this?
Probably with the online, yeah.
Okay, so we're going to put everyone on the spot. You don't get to sneak away by, everyone will know what you voted for. So Brad,
Yes.
we'll go to Paul,
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Jamie. Is Jamie there or did she leave? Okay, we'll go to Nikki.
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
and Randy.
Yes.
Motion passes. I'm not sure if Jamie's been excused yet. Is she still on there? We're not able to hear Jamie. We'll give her one last chance. Jamie?
She's been kind of in and out, it looks
She's
like.
been losing service. All right, well, either way, motion passes. We call that unanimously?
Unanimous, was it 9-0?
Yes, 9-0. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Blair. We'll now go to our sixth item on the agenda, which is only an informational. We will not be voting on anything, but we'll turn some time over to Lindy, who is the Wildlife Licensing Coordinator.
Hi, if you have any questions, comments about it, the informational, I'm here to help you out. So far, we're moving forward with this for the 2023 big game application.
I just think you did a pretty good job. I know that the Wildlife Board, had asked you to look into doing these from prior years, and I think it's going to help with our application process. So I don't have any other questions. Does anyone else or comments?
I think you've done a great job of addressing those issues that are concerned to people about being able to know what the numbers are before they apply. And I think you're doing as good a job as you can at that.
Thank you.
And I really liked the presentation and thought it was well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Lindy?
This is Matt Clark again. So last year we had a discussion and some action on these people that draw a tag every year and then turn it back in right before the season started if they didn't find what they're looking for. Have you had enough data to comment on whether this has been curbed a little bit or not?
Yes and no. So I'm gathering all the data I wanted last year and this year so I can get some good numbers. We saw a decrease of surrender permits for 2020, but for 2021, we're seeing an increase of surrendered permits. So I'm hoping to gather all the data this December, January, and then give an informational or some kind of update to everyone because we're kind of curious as well as what it actually kind of impact it's making. We were kind of shocked to see an increase in surrendered permits this year. So
You think that's environmental just because of the drought?
I've been looking at the reasons because we asked the hunters to give us a reason, and it's across the board from jobs to vacation to medical to other where they don't tell us, and some is drought, but it wasn't the majority of them. It's just across the board.
Thank you.
When you say increase in 2021, is that an increase off of our long-term average or an increase off of 2020?
That's what I want to look at. It's an increase from 2020, but I wanted to compare it this year's to 2019. We all know 2020 was kind of a weird year, so.
This is kind of a bizarre question, but is there any consistency to the unit? Is there anything that would indicate it's one area or two areas or three areas, or is that across the board as well?
It's across the board.
Okay.
We do see a lot of Wasatch and Manti, but that's kind of understandable because of the permit numbers. So that's one thing I want to look at as well, is seeing if it's a certain
I
unit.
would be curious to know, because I would have assumed they would have been, limited entry deer units or
Elk is very popular, the limited entry elk.
to return the permit or surrender the permit.
Yeah, that's the bigger species that's surrendered.
Huh. Thank you, Lindy. I was curious.
Now I have a question. And you're still looking at would you say these are very high point holders, or would you say these are?
I haven't looked into that yet.
All right. Sorry.
No, you're good. As soon as, like I said, this December, January, that's what I'm going to be analyzing, and hopefully I can get some better answers for you guys. So then I have 2 years worth of data.
Any other questions or comments? Well, thank you very much. We also didn't have any comments or comments from those who are in attendance, public who are in attendance. So, but you get to stay there because you're also up on the next agenda item number 7, the max points permits and over-the-counter elk permit recommendations. And again, everyone's had the opportunity to watch the presentation, I hope, and to read the comments and everything. So at this time, I'll ask for questions from members of the RAC that you may have concerning agenda item number 7 for Lindy.
This is Randy. I'll ask a couple real quick, if that's all right. Oh, can you hear me?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry, go
Okay,
ahead, Randy.
Hey, so Lindy, one, I'm going to apologize because I know this is going to be long sessions that you're having on these, and you normally don't get beat up too much. So, my
It's good.
condolences.
It's good. Yeah.
So what are, just to get everybody on the same level, what is the data that you are wanting to collect as part of moving this for a 1 year to a draw?
So part of the moving it to the draw is to collect the data. We want to see how many, potential are there that wanting any bull and a spike bull permit. Right now, we know that there's 17,500 any bull elk hunters out there, but we don't know how many people are interested in this permit. Same with the spike. So putting it to a draw would give us that. It also could tell us how many people use the any bull, but if they don't get it, they want a spike, or vice versa. If they're a spike hunter, but if they don't get the spike, can they get an any bull? Or if they're a straight any bull hunter or a straight spike hunter, like that kind of stuff we don't understand and we don't know. But it's also a bigger picture. It's more of a supply and demand as well. We have the demand out there for these permits, and we don't have enough supply for them. So that's, getting the data is definitely one of the reasons, but the main reason is because of supply and demand.
Okay.
If I could piggyback onto Randy's question before he moves on to his next one. It seems like the multi-season permits is kind of what made this go sideways. And so if we're going to do this for a year, but we're not making them choose a season, it seems to me like everybody's going to want to do a multi-season permit if they can, if they have the opportunity, even if they're not going to intend to hunt all 3 seasons. Do you have data from this year showing how many wanted a multi-permit versus a specific season?
Yeah, so this year, right now it's a combined quota. So you can go in and purchase, you could have gone in and bought an any bull elk permit, and you could pick multi-season, rifle, or muzzleloader. That was just open, and it came off the top, the 17,500. So out of that 17,500, 42% of them were multi-season permits.
So I guess I'm just worried that if we do this, the multi-season option is just going to skew the data, and we're really not going to know how many people want to hunt archery, how many people want to hunt muzzleloader.
Would you agree with that comment or question/comment?
We have a good idea of how many people want archery permits because, it's a straight archery permit. But it also would show us like how many people want to hunt all 3 seasons if we did keep the multi-season. But if we didn't have the multi-season, it would show us what their true weapon type that they want to hunt too. So it's pros and cons to both, getting rid of it or keeping it. Both ways we can get some valid data.
Yeah, thanks for letting me squirm in there, Randy.
No, that's fine. And these questions are more questions just to establish, I think, because there are a ton of comments on this particular subject. So I wanted to get out some information so everybody's kind of on the same base. So Lindy, could you explain the application fee to us? There's a lot of comments about money and all that. And, you know, if it goes to a draw, obviously it's going to cost people more money to do it. But where does that application fee of $10 come from, and what control is there over that?
Okay, yeah. So when you apply in the drawing, it does cost, $10 for a species application. $2.50 of it about is around, some days, some years it's, $2.49 because we negotiate that price with our contractor every year. But on average is about $2.50. Goes back to our contractor that runs the draw. That's the cost to do business. $7.50 comes back to the division and pays for projects to our protected wildlife. It pays for staffing in our admin section. So that $7.50 comes back to us and goes into our restricted funds.
Okay. Does the division have any control over how much the application fee is?
No, that was established by our legislators. It's in our fee schedule, and it's $10, and it would have to be a legislative change for that, which we did last year, 2020. That's why non-residents is 15 and residents is 10, because in 2020 that was voted to raise that up for them.
Okay. All right. And then I'm going to try to keep this as a question and not a comment, but we've known there's been a problem with the system, with our computer system for a while. How on earth did it get worse?
So I get where you're coming from. It's a common question. So our system, it's a contract that we use through what we call the Department of Technology Services, or we call them DTS. So you may hear that term a lot. It's a contract that we run through them that does all of our websites for all of the departments and divisions for the state. So it's the exact same contractor that does, when you register your vehicle, it's the exact same contractor that runs that website that runs ours. Over the years, we are currently working on the weak links, is what people call them, in the database or in the programming to fix them. And we fix it, and then each year something else kind of falls apart because of the pressure. The nice thing about this year, we are working with our contractor with them, and we are expanding our capacity database, not database, but the capacity that we have for our servers. So it should be a lot better coming up, but it does take time. This has been a year and a half in working through DTS, getting the funding, working with the DWR and trying to get all the funds for it. So we are in the progress. We're trying to upgrade it to handle this. But even if we had the best robust system possible, these permits would probably sell out in 2 minutes versus 10 hours. So again, it goes back to supply and demand. The demand for these permits is outweighing the supply. And so we're virtually causing an over-the-counter draw. Whoever can get in line the quickest will get the permit. So we're trying to distribute these permits fairly and equitably as much as possible. And that's one reason why we're thinking that the draw might be the best for that. Because some people cannot take that day off of work. Some people have other obligations for family or this or that. And they get on at 10 o'clock in the morning and they're gone if we had the most robust system possible. So, but we are working on our cell system, but it's not just because of that why we're recommending this.
Okay, I appreciate it. And I know there's going to be a ton of questions and comments, so I won't monopolize
You're
this.
good.
I am going to make one comment, though, and this is not directed to you, Lindsay. I'm beyond exasperated with the Wildlife Board. They made this problem worse last year. We had a golden opportunity. The division had recommended to expand the general hunt areas for the elk. They took that off the board, didn't even consider it, and changed that to hams hunt. Those areas added 73 permits versus a very popular hunt for the general population. Taking that extra area away was inexcusable. So that's my rant. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then while we are asking questions, since there's two major topics here, let's let's address right now just on the permits that are going to draw before we go into the max point portion of it.
Lindy, I want to take you back earlier in this conversation when you're talking about the data. Now, we've only had the multi-season hunt for just several years, right?
Since 2018, yes.
2018. Is the data prior to 2018, would that be useful? Because that would give you an indication of what your hunters wanted at that point prior to the multi-season tag being offered, right?
We do have that.
Is it valuable to you? I mean,
It is, but we've got new hunters. But it doesn't always show us if they're either or, like if they get any bull and they couldn't get it, are they a spike hunter too?
Okay.
That
My
it won't
curiosity
show us
was, would there be that big a change from 18 to 21?
that. It might be because we have seen an increase of new hunters in Utah.
Okay, that's fair. Thank you.
Can you give a recap? The change in numbers with archery tags sold with the multi-season put in place?
So in 2017, this is before the multi-season permits went into place, we sold 12,231 archery permits. In 2018, when we introduced and was approved for the multi-season, we dropped down to 9,757 archery permits. So we saw a decrease. We can see that probably these archery hunters purchase of multi-season. However, in 2019, we went up to 10,255. So the archery hunters were coming back. And then 2020, we went up to 12,321. And this year, this is our highest, is 12,439 archers. So now we're selling more archery permits before multi-season permits were introduced.
Lindy, has there been, it seems to me like in looking at everything that the desirable permit is the multi-season permit. If you broke that multi-season permits out and put those into a draw and left the others over the counter, is that an option?
It's definitely an option if you guys want to make that motion, but I still see the demand for those permits for any bull or spike that go and sell in July, the same issue that we have today, too much demand for the supply. But I see, it's definitely a possibility just to put the multi-season in a draw.
But you don't feel like that would fix it?
I don't know.
Okay.
We would still have too many people trying to obtain those any bull or spike permits in July. And they'd still sell out within a day.
Okay, so another question. The system needs updating or needs work. Can you give me an idea of what that's costing?
Hold on. They just texted it to me earlier today, so I'm pulling it up. For the stuff that we're working on right now, it's about 100,000. But that's just what we're doing right now that we got approval for. So when we do these kind of things, we have to get approval, not just from our director's office, but from other people as well that are higher up in our division of finance. So it's not just going to our director and say, hey, can we get 50,000 here, 50,000 there? We have a budget that we have to work with that's approved a year in advance, each fiscal year. And so we have to ask for that money in advance.
And so that's kind of my point is my experience in government is you have a budget. Unforeseen expenditures are difficult, and I see this just as an ongoing increase in requested funds to update or keep that system able to handle. What's the projected increase in permits as you go from year to year? How many requests for permits did we increase over the last couple of years?
So are you talking about like permits itself or like people trying to obtain it?
Yeah, the number of people that can you come up with a number?
That's the question. That's the $1 million question here.
How many wanted a permit that didn't get a permit?
That's what we don't know because they're online. We can see how many IP addresses are hitting our website. and we get up to 50, 60,000 IP addresses, but we don't know if that means that Justin's hitting 5 different IP addresses. Well, he said 4, and then Mike's hitting 10, We don't, or you're just hitting 1. That's the $1 million question. And that's some of the data that we would like to get from the draw.
One for multiple people too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so, one thing that with it being a 1-year trial, we want to work with the elk committee that's going to be, convening together in January or March, this spring to review the statewide elk plan. We can answer that question saying, hey, this is how many people applied. We get that it's going to be kind of skewed just because it will be in the draw and more people may apply. But we can say, this is how many people said they may want this permit. Right now, it's kind of like, we had this many people, IP addresses hit our server, but it's not people.
Okay, so this does not affect the number of permits that are provided.
No, I'm not
It's-
taking away opportunity.
It's only the system in issuing the permits.
It's the way we distribute. Yep, correct.
And in your opinion, and you've said it, it's supply and demand. If the supply or if the demand is outdoing the supply, I don't see us ever going back to a over-the-counter. It's just like what happened with the deer permits. We had to go to a draw for deer permits with the population increase in the state and the increased number of hunters. Do you actually see this as a trial period, or is this just the step to go to a draw for the elk?
Me personally, I see it as a 1-year trial period. I want what's best for the public and what's best for the division. And if that means we can work with the elk committee, work with DTS and get these back over the counter, I'm all for it. But if it's best to put it back, leave it in the draw, then I'm all for that too. I just want what's best for our public, so the frustration's not there for our publics trying to obtain these permits.
And one other question, it appears to me from what I read that youth permits are unlimited.
Correct, for any bull, they will still stay that way. And they have the option to apply in the drawing form or not apply, because each parent's different. I don't want to take away that choice. Like me, I would pay the $10 to apply my kid because I don't want to deal with the hassle. But I don't want to say that for my next door neighbor. They may say differently. They would say, I'll deal with the hassle and get it in July and not pay the $10. So that's why we're doing it both ways.
Okay, thank you.
So Lindy, this is Matt Clark again, just to make sure I wrote this down correctly. The spike tags are not selling out on the first day, correct? They take a couple of days.
Correct.
But this is mostly the any bull permits, and 42 to 47% of those are multi-season permits.
Correct. So the spike sold out in about 5 days this year. So we're seeing the same trend. Each year the demand for those permits are getting it. So we're trying to be proactive. Plus, it would tell us who wants spike, so we can answer that question on spike hunters when that time comes. I lost my train of thought here. What was the second part of your question? Sorry, Matt.
Yeah, the second part of the question was that for the any bull permits,
Oh, the multi-season.
once we did the multi-season permit, that's getting close to half. People are choosing that option.
Yeah, so for spike, we offered 28%, only 28% of those permits went to the multi-season for spike. It was the 42% for the any bull. So less people definitely hunt multi-season for those on those spike permits.
So roughly of the 17,500 permits, 7,350 would be the multi, if you do 42%, that's a pretty close
It
number.
was 7,430 because some of those are youth.
Okay.
And so just kind of as a
Kobe that wants to help with some, maybe we'll have Kobe answer some, help with this.
I just want to clarify something to make sure the RAC and everybody's on the same page and make sure that we understand the concern that we're addressing with the multi-season. And that is that the only way that the multi-season affects anything is if it were an archer that jumped to multi-season, because archery currently unlimited, has been unlimited. And so if an archer jumps to multi-season, then that individual's purchase of a permit counts against the quota, whereas before it didn't. And we can definitely say, in looking at the data, that probably got us to this supply-demand issue more quickly, right? It got us to where we are more quickly. It may have taken a few more years than what it did, but after looking at the numbers, we don't know the exact demand, obviously, because we can't sell an unlimited number of permits, haven't had it in a draw, but we do know, after looking at the numbers, that reversing that won't fix this. Reversing that with no change in supply won't change this. You're not going to have a bunch of folks jump back to archery. We're already back to over 12,000 archers. The few thousand archers that we lost when we reduced the permit, we've increased enough across all weapon types. We're already back there, and that's what. So, I think it's a good discussion, but focusing on that and whatever the RAC decides to do on that issue is fine. I just want to make sure everybody understands that won't change it so that we have enough supply.
17,500 permits or 17,500 permits, whether they're hunting multi-season or whatever. The only thing it would help with would be possibly crowding. Possibly.
Maybe, you have to look at 100 days. It hasn't made a difference in harvest percent success at all. So
If I could jump in.
Yeah.
So Kobe, if I could jump in before you leave, are you guys surveying hunter days for these people that you have chosen the multi-permit option?
Absolutely. Kent Hersey's online. And Kent, could you chime in on that? Because I know I looked at harvest. We looked at harvest earlier. We looked at it last night, and harvest success hasn't changed at all. And 100 days, I would just be speculating if I said that it increased or not increased. So we have those data, and we could look at those. So Kent, did you catch that?
Yeah, I did. Give me 1 minute to look it up.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you.
For sake of time, while he's looking that up, is there any other questions? And then we'll go back to Matt after we get that answer. Is that okay, Matt?
Sure.
So Lindy, I've got one question. Going through the public comments, we've covered a lot of the issues that they brought up. There was one other one that I pulled out that from a lot of people is there's concern about the number of non-residents purchasing tags. What percentage are we at right now?
5%. So it's very low. It's actually, if you want numbers for permits, for any bowl was 957 permits went to non-residents. And on Spike, only 363 non-residents purchased these permits. It's a combined quota right now. So we don't say this is how many permits for non-residents and residents. It's just combined. And it's less than what we offer for general season deer, because right now we do 10% for our big game species.
Okay, sorry, it's going to take a minute or two. For some reason, the file I have that Heather put together is blank on any weapon on the multi-season days. Typically any bull hunters hunt 5.4 days on average. So I got to figure out where the data exists for the multi-season. I'm not sure if we have it split out by tag when we do our surveys or not. I have to try and find that. So bear with me and I'll try and chime in.
While he's doing that, I have a question, and I'm not sure who can answer that. If today if our RAC wanted to make a proposal to add those 5 units last year that went to hams back into the general season, obviously we can make that recommendation, but does the Wildlife Board have that ability to pass that for this month?
I'm going to pass that one on to Kobe, since that is his expertise.
Seriously, Justin, I was comfortable.
I'm serious.
So
I don't get to make motions, but if I could, I would, and that would be one.
Okay, so what I would say is that when we made that recommendation, the management plan for elk hunting was open because we met with the committee that wrote the statewide elk plan for kind of a mid-plan review. We said, what's working well? What isn't working? What problems are we facing? What troubles are we coming up with? And one of the things that we identified is this exact problem. We identified that general season is really important to a lot of people, really important. I'm a general season elk hunter. And I'm a multi-season tag purchaser as well. So I've hunted both. I love it. I love general season elk hunting. I've hunted general season elk and had great experiences, and I've hunted 6 days and seen 1 calf. So it's some of the hardest, most heartbreaking, and most fun hunts there are. But as we met as a group and identified these problems, this supply issue, and made these recommendations, the plan was opened again. So it was a 7-year plan. We opened it mid-plan, took that back through the process. And then when we made the motions, we made those adjustments in the plan and closed it, knowing that we would open it back up in 2022 to review it again. And so currently, we're not making motions on plan adjustments. So that would be a hard thing to address right now.
That would be considered a plan adjustment?
Yeah, it would be considered a plan adjustment. Let me double check and make sure.
Well,
but
I think we could make if a motion was made, we'll let the Wildlife Board and those above us make that decision. But
you could definitely ask us to work through it.
I'm winking and hitting here to members of our.
Hey, Justin, let me chime in real quick. Those areas being moved over to hams is part of the problem. But remember, the proposal last year was not only expanding the area, it went to an unlimited amount of tags. And I know people were horrified by that. But what happened by the board and the RACs, I think, voted for this as far as numbers go. When we put a hard number, this is the number of tags, we created panic buying. So everybody like, if in doubt, oh my hell, I'm getting this tag because there's not enough of them. So it was a twofer. It's not just the land. They took the land away, which was crazy to do. But by limiting the amount of tags, it also created this panic buying. I don't know if I'm going to be able to hunt or not, but damn it, I'm buying that license just in case. So for what that's worth.
So this is Matt Clark again. Can I ask Kobe a follow-up to that? Based on the Central RAC's discussion from yesterday?
Sure.
So the question that I have, we're talking about doing this as a draw, and exactly the same thing that Randy said is going to happen. People are going to put in that may not necessarily have an intention to hunt. If we did something similar to what the Central region did to make tags unlimited for 1 year to see what happens, is that going to have a negative biological impact?
This question is an exact reason why I think this was so hard through the public last year. And the division hasn't done a great job at explaining wildlife management in this aspect, I guess. The short answer is no, because we're talking about male harvest or bull harvest. And all of the areas that are any bull have a lot of protections for elk. And what I mean by protections is they're dominated by private land. They have a lot of areas that are wilderness and hard to access. They have areas where these same herds, and I'm just thinking about different areas in the state, like the South Slope, they have tribal protections where you can't hunt them there. The North Slope, they have areas where it's wilderness and it's very hard to access. A lot of the northern region units that are any bull have a lot of private property and areas are refugia. And so the bull-cow ratios are fine to make sure that every cow has the opportunity to take and have a calf, right? If she has the ability, she's covered. We don't have any areas where we're lacking bulls and can't cover cows, right? That's not a problem in the state of Utah. And we're not unique in this. I mean, other states have unlimited permits for elk. Now, this isn't a division proposal tonight, and I will reinstate that. This was the division proposal from a previous year. But as far as biological population consequences, we never would have made the recommendation if we had those concerns. It could make elk hunting more difficult, right? Because when you apply pressure to elk, they're smart, they're harder to find. So it could make it more difficult, and you could see more people in your favorite spot to hunt. And everyone also could have a permit. So those are some things to think about.
Thank you. I guess what I'm getting at, this is a trial period, we're just trying to collect data. I would want to try to eliminate panic buyers as much as we can and just have people that actually intend to hunt buying tags. So, I guess I would be in favor of, for a 1-year period, let's make it unlimited. I'm going to set the multi-season thing aside for now. Let's make it unlimited, see how many get sold, and then we'll have an idea, especially if we can compare 100 days, at the end of the season and see how many of these people are actually hunting. Because I suspect that a lot of people are buying tags and either only hunting one season or not at all.
Okay, let's, we're still in the question period. As we're asking questions, and I guess right now I'm asking to try to help with the meeting, asking questions just with have to do with the permit allocation, if we would put it to a draw or leave it over the counter. Are there any other questions for members of the RAC about this? All right. I think we could go into the comments, which we've done a little bit. And then also, what I'm going to try to do here is we'll have our experiences with it. As we ask for comments from RAC members, after we ask the comments from the RAC members, I will then ask for comments from the public. And after that, we can entertain a motion on first half of this. Yes, we'll do that after. Did you ask questions or just comments, right? Only comments. So they don't, it's not questions, only comments from the public. Okay. So no other questions. Let's go ahead. Comments concerning the permits, if we want to look at them to go to a draw or stay over the counter from RAC members.
I guess I'll start this one. I've gone back and forth with this. Obviously, the public sentiment is pretty clearly opposed from the majority, but I understand the goal of acquiring the data. One of my main concerns is I think we've generated panic buying, and we're going to generate panic applying as well. And it would concern me to then take that data to the elk committee to make the decisions on, when it can be a bit inflated on what the demand really is. And so I don't know how much confidence I think we can necessarily have in the numbers. It does give us more information than we have today to go off of, but over and over we keep talking about this is a 1-year trial, and on the surface it is until the elk committee makes it permanent, and then it's not a 1-year trial. So I liked also the comments with the 5 units that were pulled out last year. I think that in conjunction with the unlimited certainly would have made a difference in taking that step to an unlimited amount of permits. But seeing this shift with the consistent increase in multi-season tags, I don't know that addressing anything with multi-season specifically is really going to make a difference either way, whether it's in a draw or purchased over the counter this year.
This is Matt Clark again. I guess my comment would be what I said before. I think we get better data if it's biologically safe, which Kobe says it is, just to let them be unlimited for 1 year. I mean, these are low success rate units. Let's kind of not think about the multi-unit thing. Let's just make it unlimited, see what people buy when they're not panic buying, when they know that they can buy whatever they want, whenever they want, and then go forward, present that to the elk committee.
Yeah, I'll chime in real quick. Won't rehash any of the things that we've talked about, but I'm really struggling on this one because I would like to see some solid data. I don't know if 1 year will do it, but as the RACs and the board, the complaint too often is we ignore the public input when the public input comes in. There was a lot of public input on this, and it was very one-sided. We need to seriously and heavily consider that.
Go ahead.
Sorry, before we do any more comments, it was brought to my attention, I probably went out of order a little bit. I would like, before we go into the comments of the RAC, to allow those who are in attendance who have questions, / comments, to address it before we discuss anymore. It may help us with more of our questions that we have after hearing from our public. So if that's all right, we'll go ahead and let those who are in attendance come forward to have their questions. And then when they are done, we will then go back into more comments. So with that, I'm going to start. We have a comment card here for Ross Worthington. Ross is here. We'd invite him to come forward first. Ross, you will have, so this is for everyone, you'll have 3 minutes as you represent yourself. And if you represent a group, you will receive 5 minutes. And please don't think we're rude. If you go over, we will be stopping you and asking you to end. So, all right.
Appreciate the time, everybody taking time out of their lives to be here. And honestly, the division, this is obviously a very hot topic. Again, I'm just an average sportsman, just myself. But I appreciate, Lindy, she talked about some things that I know are concerns with friends and family and people that I know with, and the public, there's the public comment. I get it strongly one-sided, but everybody's looking from their perspective and what fits to them. And I think it is extremely important for that person that can't get out of work. You completely take away that opportunity. I would love to see last year's proposal of unlimited tags if the numbers supply it, but that creates a whole other problem. In that I find on social media, you see people complaining about lack of opportunity, but then turn around and complaining about herd numbers, and then they equally turn around and are complaining about how busy it is out in the field. I'm sorry, we can't have both. You get one or the other. Again, this is our opportunity as the public for our comments, and your guys need to obviously take that into consideration, but sometimes tough decisions come down to having to take things into consideration that the public isn't. I think the draw system, more importantly, that you look at is a direction that it was heading to anyways. The thing that's not talked about is Utah's population in the last 10 years grown 500,000 people. On average in the nation, from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, 5% of the population hunts. I'd argue that's higher here. If you take 500,000 at 5%, we have 25,000 new hunters in the state. We don't have a non-resident issue. We have just simply, as it's been talked about, a supply and demand issue. And I think part of the fear that I would acknowledge with the public is there is a fear in watching what happened with the general deer, and afraid that that's going to be what the deer hunt or the elk hunt becomes. And the reality is that probably at some point it is. Because again, unless we can increase the herd, there's just only so much supply and demand. It's just tough decisions that are going to have to be made. As far as in some of the data and the research, so I guess for me in that, I'd support and understanding going to the draw. I think it's important to get that data of how many people would hunt. I would love to see a couple other things. Again, speaking from my own perspective, I buy multiple tags because of kids and my wife, but therefore I get an over the counter. I would actually not buy multiple tags if, like what they do with the mentor tag, if there's a way to do a shared tag where you pay a fee to have 2 people on a tag, then you take away and create opportunity and limit maybe number of tags someone are buying, just trying to create opportunities. The only other comment I have is on, oh, you're good. I'm good.
So doing these virtual meetings for the last year and a half has caused me to forget how to run one of these meetings. Before we come up to these comments, I should have asked if there, while Lindy is up here, and we'll give Covey, if you want, I'll let you sit down in the front, but that way if you have sorry. But we'll allow, if there's anyone here present in the room that is public that have questions for Lindy or for Covey, to have this chance right now to ask a question before the comment period. And if you do have a question to ask, you raise your hand and come to the mic and say your name.
Like, public can ask.
If you have yes.
So I actually would just have a question as far as in the survey and some of the data you're looking at. I think it would be interesting with the 3-season tag of making a required survey to find out what seasons did somebody actually hunt. Are they hunting all 3? What are they hunting? To see kind of what that creates as far as pressures and numbers. So thank you.
All right. That was kind of answered, or do you want to, I'll give you a second to do that, Lindy.
So I can kind of address that. One thing that, we do a random survey on these permits anyways, and that's kind of what, Kent and Covey and his team does. So we kind of have that in random, but it's not everyone. One thing that we would be doing when working with elk committee is sending out a survey and kind of asking those questions as well, saying, what season do you like? You buy the multi-season? Are you hunting all 3? Are you just hunting the rifle and muzzleloader? So we'd be asking those kind of questions too with the when we send out a survey with the elk committee.
Thank you, Lindy. Now, if there's not any other questions from anyone in the public, we'll continue with the comment cards. And Ross, thank you. And I apologize for putting you out of order. All right. We'll next go to Brandon Zundel. If you have a comment. I get to put a face with the name now, finally.
Yeah, can you hear me now? I had actually written my comments down covering the entire agenda topic. Do you want me to break that out? Because, we've got a single agenda item, but there's...
Go ahead. We'll probably need to do them all. You've got 3 minutes where it is one
I
agenda.
can cover this all in 3 minutes. I just don't want my other 2 things not thought about, because I'm going to talk about 3 different things here. And I just want to make sure that they're all considered. So I can go through all 3, or I can wait on the other 2.
Please go through all 3 on this, and we'll
I'm just going to stay on topic and read what I wrote then, because otherwise I'll ramble. My name is Brandon Zundel. I represent myself. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and the rest of you guys for everything you do. And I also want to thank the division for the hard work they do, especially Lindy and Covey, because they accept my calls and listen to all of my ideas, no matter how crazy they might be at times. The first thing I want to address is the draw point change. So we're not talking about elk right now. Max point holders already get a very substantial advantage in the draw, and even an advantage during the bonus point portion of that draw. I think 50-50 is more than fair to them, and taking another 10% out of that bonus point draw will not do anything to address point creep. So let's just leave that alone. Now, onto the elk. Earlier this week, I would have thought my thoughts were going to be unpopular, but after last night's Central RAC meeting, it appears I'm not alone in my ideas. The issue we have with the elk tags is a false scarcity issue, fear of missing out, if you will. The computer system could be addressed by more creative developers, but there's a much simpler idea than that. The elk committee needs data to make some better recommendations, and we should provide them that data. But they need accurate data, and putting the tags in the draw will not provide that. In fact, it'll actually create even more false scarcity. The solution is simple, and that is to remove the cap on any bull tags, probably even spike tags. Let as many people that want to buy tags buy tags. Now, even 30,000 bull elk hunters will not harm the resource. Elk are notoriously good at not dying. Would it create more crowded woods? Sure it would, but there won't be 30,000 any bull tags sold. In fact, by removing the cap, you remove all scarcity and that fear of missing out. There's no need to buy a tag until the hunter wants to actually go hunting. And many people are currently buying tags in the hope that they'll go out. And many of those never actually go out for more than maybe a day or two. I've done it myself in the past with fall turkey tags when there was a cap. Since then, since the cap was removed, I haven't bought a fall turkey tag more than once because I wasn't going to go hunting. The simple fact is removing the cap will give the elk committee the accurate data they need to make some informed recommendations. And last thing, and changing the subject, it was brought up in the Central RAC last night to extend the youth any bull elk season by 2 more days. Then that would have it end on the Tuesday before the muzzleloader deer opener. As the guy who caused the archery overlap with the youth, I absolutely love this idea, and I encourage you to recommend that to the board as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Brandon. Well done. All right, our next comment card is from John Jones.
First and foremost, thank you for being here and representing us and hearing our problems. For me, I mean, my hunting time is probably limited due to some health issues. My shaking's getting pretty bad. But in the past 40 years, I've hunted with my family. I started hunting with my in-laws in Huntington Canyon prior to the big bull hunt, whenever they had the draw or the lottery, which I really don't understand how is legal in the state of Utah. Seems a little far-fetched. But for us to change the hunt as it is today in any bull will take away the opportunity for those family hunters who hunt together. We go down, buy a tag together, we go out together, and we spend that week as a family looking for elk. Whether we get one or not, we're happy just being there together. The problem with opening it up to all of the tags, you know, anybody can get one, it does eliminate the value of the bull that you're getting. And that's a lot of the reasons why those folks hunting any bulls are not hunting for spike only, is because we're out there looking for something a little bit nicer. I had the awesome opportunity this year to hunt with my 14-year-old grandson who took a 6-point bull at 750 yards up above Red Cloud Loop in the wilderness area. We usually hike about 120 miles a year. I'm opposed to the lottery. I think it takes away from the advantage for families to stick together, hunt together, and be together. And I would like to see a continued management process so that we're not killing off some of the mature bulls so that there's always something extra to hunt for. A lot of years we'll pass up a spike so that we'll have the opportunity to get something better. And it just adds to the value for others. Thank you. I hope you'll take my comments into consideration and look at your family when you go hunting.
Sorry. Thank you very much, John. Next would be Eric Van Workum. It says a group. Are you representing a group or?
Yeah.
I'll have you come forward so you'll.
Yeah, no, I'm grateful to stand before you guys today. I mean, I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but I'll echo some of the comments that I've seen earlier. But I mean, I was extremely disappointed to see this come across social media, and kind of my work and my business is on social media. So we spend the day monitoring comments, reading and producing content and whatnot. And, you know, as one of the guys that waited in line at Walmart and seeing a guy that bought 20 tags for his coworkers, cousins, families, that was one thing I didn't see discussed today. And then, you know, the panic buying, I would only see panic applying at that point. So I think that that's definitely an issue. So yeah, not to beat a dead horse here, a lot of smart minds here and people discussing some of these things, but maybe we could limit the, you know, the people going to the Walmarts or the sporting goods places who are buying tags for everybody. And yeah, I don't know. I just think that, you know, I know that I get that there's a supply and demand issue, but, you know, I think that if we do this right, I think we have, you know, another 5, 10 years, maybe 2 years, maybe 3 years where we can still have a true over-the-counter opportunity. And I hunt all over the West. Some of you who follow me, I hunt Idaho, Montana, and all these other places. And it's just seeming like the residents in this state we're getting less opportunity than, say, other states. And I just think with a little bit smarter planning that we can do this correctly. So anyway, obviously I appreciate the time. So.
Thank you, Eric. And then our final comment card would be from Troy Justinson.
Kind of feels good to be back and see people's faces instead of this virtual crap. So thank you for being here tonight. I want to echo what Randy said there. You hit the nail on the head that we missed the opportunity last year to expand opportunity dramatically, not only by increasing the number of permits, but also open up some additional areas. Matt's on point as well, that if we really want to see what's the word I'm looking for, the desire to hunt, by opening up unlimited would tell us exactly how many people have the desire to purchase these permits. I agree with him as well that we have created a panic buying or panic putting in. So, you know, as far as a group at Sportsman Fish and Wildlife, our group supports the division recommendation as long as it's 1 year. We understand it. We don't like it, but we would be more than willing to go with changing that recommendation and going to unlimited to get that same data to make the decisions in the future. We also don't support going to 60-40. We want to leave it at the 50-50 as far as the max point holders. There's probably more people in this room than I'm a max point holder for deer, and that's coming from a guy that has pretty much max points for deer, and I support that we already are at the top level. And it's a short fix, and then we're right back where we started with, so we just need to leave it where it's at. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Troy, and thank you, everyone, for your comments and for questions. Now at this time, we'll turn to comments from the RAC, if you have any.
You know, one of the frustrating things about being on the RAC, and I've been here now for over 6 years, is the division, and not just the division, but committees are formed. They do all of this work. They study. They're the professionals, and then we come in on an evening or look at it for a few days, and we come in here and tell them how wrong they are or how right they are. It's a hard place to be. The elk committee made the decisions to change the plan, and that plan was accepted by the committee, and that plan is in place. For them to change that, as Covey has said, they can't change the plan. It's in effect for another 2 or 3 years. Excuse me. So I just wanted to make that comment. It's hard to say that they're not asking for the right thing. They're the ones that do it. And if they say that it would give them the data that they need, I believe that it would give them the data that they need. So anyway, I just didn't want to overlook or have it overlooked that this isn't just a shot in the wind. There were as many comments in the comments that I read, and there were somewhere around 100, I would guess, that were just exactly what was said. Too many hunters in the field. We want a quality hunt. We don't want to be out there with everybody else fighting for somewhere to hunt. All I see is orange, they say. All it's the quality of the hunt has gone down. So somehow it needs to be controlled so that we do have a quality hunt rather than just an open door that says we can go out. So anyway, that's my comment.
Just because it's been brought up a couple times, Kobe, in theory, the spike hunts take place on limited entry units. If we went unlimited on spike tags, what effect can it have on the limited entry herds? Or would it?
So on those units, we agree to manage those units for both. We harvest some yearling bulls and we manage for an older age class bull and trophy quality. And so that recommendation, even though it's very low % success, we couldn't support, right? Because we have to keep two commitments there: manage for quality and an age class, depending upon what the unit's managed for, and offer opportunity. And we feel like we're probably at a good spot at that 15,000 right now.
Hey, Covey, could you stay up there real quick? Sorry, this is Randy again. So Kevin's comment made me think, and I want to clarify something in my mind. Okay. So did the elk committee make those changes, or did the board make those changes to adding those 5 units to the hounds and capping the permits?
Okay, I'll untangle this quickly and as best I can. The elk committee met, and when the elk committee met, we developed a couple new things. One was the hams hunts. So there were units that we recommended to go to this hams, which is a handgun, archery, muzzleloader, shotgun, no sights. It's kind of Utah's version of a primitive weapon hunt or primitive weapon elk unit. So we did that on the Plateau Caparowitz. We did that on the West Desert Deep Creek. We were going to recommend that on the Stansbury portion of the Oker Stansburys. I think those are the units, and Cache North. And then the committee with the division also said, and these units are very poor limited entry units. And so recommended some of these poor limited entry units to go to. By poor, I mean they weren't meeting the management objectives. They weren't providing the quality hunt that we hope to provide to sportsmen. And they probably made more sense to be any bull units. And so that recommendation was taken forward to make them general season. And it's four of the units, 4 additional general season units. I think I said 5 in the past, but it's actually, I think it was 4. And then when that proposal reached the board, it was not accepted. Now, this isn't, I want to be very clear, this isn't a bash on the board session for me. I understand that board members are put in a very tough spot. They have a lot of pressures too. And ultimately, they're the chosen body to set wildlife policy. It was Justin right at the beginning. So I don't know if we always understand all of their pressures and decisions. But if the question is, that recommendation came from the elk committee, went through the public process, and then it was one of the recommendations that wasn't supported by the board. That's the answer.
Thank you.
Another comment, and sorry, Kobe. The addition to the 2 extra days for the youth hunt, is there any negative effects? It would still close before the muzzleload deer begins. So there was really, would that be okay? Would you feel like the division would support something like that?
That's okay, but we're going to wait until the next agenda topic.
You're right. Sorry.
So thanks, Mr. Chair.
I'm blaming Brandon on that one for bringing it. Oh, okay. Okay. Any other comments? I would entertain a motion on the portion considering the permits over the counter permits versus the limited entry.
This is Matt Clark. I'd like to make a motion if I may. So I would like to make a motion that we reject the draw option that the DWR is recommending and go to unlimited permits for 1 year so that we can get an actual real count of the people that are going to buy these permits. I think that'll be a better way to eliminate the panic buying. So again, I would recommend that we go to an unlimited permit for 1 year for any bull only, not spike bull.
So the motion would be to reject the portion of the, what would I call it? The portion of the agenda item concerning the draw and I wrote it down right here and I can't read my own drawing, and support or a motion to have unlimited permits for 1 year for any bull, but not the spike, excluding the spike, leave it at the 15,000.
That is correct.
That was kind of messy, but I think we're all on the same, how I just.
So Matt, can I ask you a question also?
Yes.
With the spike, would that remain over the counter under your proposal, or would that go to a draw?
The spike would remain over the counter, but the number of spike permits would not change.
My question is about the data. Is the data accurate if you go to unlimited any bull but not spike? Lindy, that's probably a Lindy question. And if you can't answer that, that might be too far off the page, too far in the bushes.
It might be too far in the bushes for me to answer. I think we would get what we want.
Then that's probably
But
what I'm
I
looking
would,
for.
with the spike,
Because on one hand, you have unlimited.
Yeah.
And on the other side, you don't. So those that don't over here are going to over here.
yeah.
And that's why my
But-
question about the accuracy of the data, just a thought.
No, I get what you're saying, but it may not also answer the questions either.
My comment would, I would say that you'd know exactly who was intended to buy the spike permits because they'd buy them because they had that option.
But they also spiked didn't sell it for 5 days. So if they wanted to spike, they could. Because they don't go within like 8 hours, like any bull.
If the other,
Well, I get what you're saying. No, I get both sides of it. Yeah.
if they can buy an any bull or versus a spike, we're going to see how many people would much rather hunt the spike versus much versus the any bull versus the spike. Do you think?
But there's a limit on the spike.
If we go over
when that
15,000, then we know that there was a
A
demand.
rush on the spike. I got you.
I just think that if you open this up to a draw, you're going to get 20-30% more people applying for the draw than you would truly have intending to hunt if they didn't feel that pressure in the moment.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table. Is there any other question before? Is there a second?
I would second it.
Oh, we had a second from Randy, so. You got to be quicker, man. Come on. All right, so we have a motion to reject the proposal concerning the permits to draw and propose that we turn any bull permits to an unlimited with no cap on any bull and keep the spike to the 15. And we have a second from Randy. Any discussion on the motions? All right, I'm going to call for a vote. We'll begin with Brad.
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Kevin,
No. No.
okay, Mike,
Yes.
Jamie. Oh, she's not here. I need to say she did ask to be excused, as we mentioned earlier. Nikki,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
Randy.
Yes.
Motion passes 1, 2, 3, 7-1. I'll give this opportunity right now for Kevin to explain so we can give the reason to the Wildlife Board.
I think I stated it a few minutes ago. I think that the division has done what they need to do to come up with a system to gather that data and to make some changes down the road. SFW supports it. I think a 1 year would be the way to go to gather that data. I don't think it's going to be, I don't think the unlimited is going to be good data.
Okay, that portion passes then. Thank you. Now let's,
Justin, is it too late to make an additional motion?
on this particular portion of it,
On this, yes, on this subject.
let me hear what it might be and then I'll tell you.
I don't want to muddy Matt's proposal once he had it up there. I would make the motion that the 4 units that were proposed to go into the general bowl should be added to the general bowl.
You would like to, a second motion, yeah, so that would be a separate, this motion passed and we're good, that you could make a second motion.
This separate motion. I don't want to attach it to Matt's, a separate motion.
Okay. Go for it.
And it was just that. I would propose that the 4 units that were proposed last year to be added to the general bowl.
Can I stop you? I believe there were 5 versus 4.
Was it 5? Okay, I heard 2 different numbers. I thought it was 5 too, but we changed it to 4.
I'm sorry. Can we state those just so there's clarity which units those are? Colby? Sorry. We got it.
Oh, okay. And let me be clear, like this is a RAC. I'm providing this information because the RAC asked me to. This is not a division proposal. Yeah. Okay. So the units last year that were proposed were 9 Mile Anthro, the Oker-Stansbury West portion of the Oker-Stansbury, the Southwest Desert North, and the Box Elder Sawtooth.
Okay. Wasn't there the North Cache on there?
North Cache was proposed as a hams.
It was originally a hams. Okay. All right. So Randy, I think the discussions there, I don't believe you need to add them into your motion to go through all the names. I just wanted the RAC to know what units they were before we get, so.
Thank you.
So your motion would be?
It's not an agenda item. It's, I don't know.
The question is,
Entertain the motion.
it's not an item specifically on the agenda, but it's an item related to the agenda. I don't know, we don't have an attorney in the audience, but
I think it can be. I think if we desire.
Well, I think we can do anything we want.
They can choose to.
You're making recommendations to the board. I think it's okay to make the recommendation.
Okay. So I think it's a good question. Okay. So we have a motion to add the 4 units that were proposed last year to be included in the general any bowl units back to that versus being in the hams. Is that enough?
Yeah, this is Matt Clark. I'll second that motion. I agree that I don't agree with the board's decision there. There's no excuse for these not to be general hunts.
Okay. Any discussion on that before I call for a vote?
I have a question. This is Emily. I don't recall. I remember that we had a very long discussion on this last year, but it's been a year. Can somebody jog my memory before I'm voting?
And please, anyone correct me if I'm wrong, but for our we agreed with the proposal to add those units to the any bull hunt. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I recall us passing that.
That's my memory of it.
All 5 RACs voted to accept that these be added. I'm pretty sure all 5 RACs voted to allow these hunts to be added into the general bull.
Covey, can you come untangle it rather quickly like you did that other one?
Really quick.
Thanks.
And then it was.
Thanks, Covey.
Did it not go into?
The mic. I don't remember exactly. So you're asking me to remember back from a rack from a year ago. I remember that the units passed most of the racks. I don't remember if they all passed the Northeastern region rack. That's the one that I don't remember. So,
Covey, I'm glad I'm not the only one that doesn't remember.
You're asking me to go on memory now. And obviously I'm not prepared for this because this wasn't part of our recommendation. So I'm doing my best.
I think that's an honest answer, but I do remember the majority, like, as you said, will question that it did pass through public comment, pass through everything. And as it arrived to the Wildlife Board, it was rejected and those were put into the hams hunt. And I could say against the majority of the racks. We'll just leave it at that. So our proposal was, this proposal that was just made is basically going back to what was proposed last year, and in an effort to let the Wildlife Board know that we still support that and think this would really help the problem that we're trying to address right now. So with that, we have a motion on the table. We have a second. I want to call for a vote. I'm going to begin again with Brad.
Yes.
Paul.
Yes.
Kevin.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Jamie's not here. Nikki.
Yes.
Emily.
Yes.
Matt.
Yes.
And Randy.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We will now entertain the last part of this. We'll have some questions, and we'll begin with questions from the RAC concerning the 60/40. And I will say also, if you have questions, any more questions about the extended 2 days in the youth, that's the next agenda. Sorry. Just go with the 60/40. I'm sorry. Yes. Thanks, Brad. Any questions?
I don't have any questions.
Any questions? I have a question for you. Will this? I should have brought my white monster. Will this, the 60/40, it's been through comments and a lot of our public discussion that talked about that. Do you believe that it would only fix the problem for maybe 3 years and then we'd be right back in the same?
So it's a hard question to answer, but I've been given the initiative to look at the whole point system, to see if we can help with point creep. That's the term everyone uses. Ultimately, there's no ultimate answer to fix point creep. There's increased permits, decreased applications. That's ultimately how it's going to solve, so everyone can draw. The initiative I've been giving is to help find ways to get people through the draw system. I believe that the 60/40 will help a pinhole of get those max point applicants through the draw, so we can lower that max point level down a few years on these bigger units that we have. So as people, get through the max point, they draw on that max point round, we can lower that. So some units, it takes 18 years, over the next 5, 6, 7 years, it could be now 16 years or 15 years. I haven't done the exact year math, but I see it lowering it, that max point level. I lost my train of thought, what I was going to say. You threw me off. I don't know. I know. If we would have done this in 2021, we would have been able to get, 480-ish max point applicants through the draw, and lower some of those off the top. What I was going to say is currently we kind of already do this, so this wouldn't affect units that have less than 10 permits. The 60/40 wouldn't really go into effect till 10 permits. So if a unit had 10 permits, that's when we'd offer 6 permits to our max point applicants and 4 permits to the regular applicants. Because currently we do 50/50, but when it's less than 10 permits, we always round up on that 50/50. So when there's 3 permits, 2 of those permits go to our max point applicants and 1 permit goes to our regular round. Same with like 5, it's 3 and 2. 7, we've got the 3, 4 and 3. Sorry, it's been a long night. So, when it's an odd number, we're already kind of giving more than 50% of those permits. So that 60/40 wouldn't take place until about 10 permits. And it's going to be mostly affecting those bigger units that have, 40, 50. Some units have a lot more permits, hundreds of permits, where you could see this happening and decreasing that level of the max point applicants down. So it's a pinhole solution, but like I said, there's never going to be a major solution unless we decide just to give everyone 1 permit, get them through the draw, and which won't happen.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
At that, let's say at the 10 permit level, the non-resident permit comes into play, correct?
Yes.
So at 10 permits, one of the 10 is non-resident. Now we're doing 60/40.
Well, I'm talking about like if it's 10 permits for residents.
Okay.
So if it's 11, if it's 9 and 1, then 9 would still be 5 and 4.
Okay. All right. That was my question.
Yeah.
is how
Sorry
that
for
would play in.
clarifying that.
And we just need to correct that. It's at 5. So we just round. So 4 and 1 up to 10, still 1. And then when you go to 15, it's 2.
Any other questions? All right, if there's no more questions from the RAC on this, is there any questions from the public? All right. We had our comments already on this, so do you want to?
Yeah. We haven't had our comments yet.
The comments from the public that were here, they addressed this at the same time as so we had one comment. We had Sportsmen for Fish and Wildlife that did not support the 60/40 split. We also had one other person that came up, Brandon, that came up that also. Right. Okay.
Yep. In addition to that comment, we also had online comments that came in for the entire agenda item. I think Kevin and Paul, you guys both mentioned that you read through the comments the same way I did. So really, this is just a review. Should have done this review before we took a vote on the other item. But be that as it may, if anybody wants to change any of the decisions they made or motions they made, that's perfectly fine too. But you guys clearly read all the comments because you hit on all of the themes in your discussion that I actually pulled out for you as well. The total participants were 84. 7 strongly agreed with our recommendation. 6 somewhat agreed with the division's recommendation. 5 neither agreed nor disagreed. 4 somewhat disagreed, and 62 strongly disagreed. The themes were limit non-resident permits, which you discussed, limit or eliminate the multi-season permit, which you discussed. There were some suggestions to make the multi-season permits a draw, which you discussed. Some suggested that the multi-season permits are the source of the panic purchasing, which you also discussed. Many of the comments wanted us to bolster our system rather than to limit the over-the-counter opportunities. Also, you discussed that. There were many concerns about once something becomes a draw, it'll stay a draw. That's also something you discussed. And that wraps up the summary. So I think you guys were clearly attuned to the many emails that we were all receiving. So nice job. I hope that helps.
Okay, thank you. So we've got comments, we've got everything. I would entertain, is there, for clarification, is there, I guess I would ask to include the remainder if there's any other items in this. I don't believe that there are, so I think we could just, we'll do comments from the RAC and then a motion on that after. Okay, comments.
So just to clarify, Justin, we're going to address the youth hunt in the next agenda item?
That's correct. According to Brad.
Okay, I would make a motion then that we reject the 60-40 split and leave it at 50-50.
Is there any other
And
comments?
I'll second with a comment. There's just no support in the public comments for this. Everything I read, large sportsmen's groups aren't supporting it. Our point system's turned into a once in a lifetime already. We need to give other people an opportunity. There's plenty of tags going to the point holders.
All right, so I have a motion from Matt to reject the proposal of 60-40 and have it remain at 50-50. And I have a second from Randy. Any discussion on that motion? Let's call for a vote. Brad?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Jamie is no longer here. Nikki?
Yes.
Emily?
Yes.
Thank you. Matt?
Yes.
And Randy?
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously. So we have 3 motions on this agenda item. I thank everyone for their comments and their work and for getting us to this point. I think it might be good to take a break, do you think, for a second?
Can I just make one comment as a suggestion for improvement based on the feedback for the division?
Sure.
The feedback here doesn't accurately, when we have multiple items like that, I think it's better in the feedback online to break that up into separate opportunities. Of the people that did specifically mention it in the feedback, you had 9 people against it and 6 people for it, which doesn't necessarily match up with the ratios there to that one specifically. So it may be beneficial in the future when we have multiple ones to break those up.
Does that make sense? That's a good comment. All right. Let's, how long, do we take a 5-minute break? We'll take a 5-minute break before we come back and continue on agenda item number 8. Can we get everyone to begin to take your seats? I know the bathroom's a little bit further away than we realized, so it's taking a little longer. Okay. We're waiting for our technical guy to get here to be able to put us back online. All right. We're ready to go back online when you are.
About pulled a hamstring there.
Tore your Achilles, you mean?
Yeah.
440.
Yeah.
YouTube is back online.
Okay, we'll return from our break and we'll go ahead and continue with the agenda for tonight's meeting. And we'll now go to our 8th agenda item, the 2022 big game hunting seasons and key dates. We have Colby Jones here. We'll invite him to come forward. At this time, we will, he's here for questions from the RAC. If you have questions for Colby concerning any of these season dates, now is your time.
So, Kobe, this is Matt Clark again. At the meeting yesterday, correct me if I'm wrong, but you decided that extending the youth hunt a couple of days does not interfere with any other hunts.
Matt, that's correct. Like as we looked at it, we're talking specifically about the youth any bull hunt, and that you could extend that from ending on Sunday through Tuesday before the general season muzzleloader deer hunt started. Yes, and part of that came because of the overlap now that is with the archery any bull hunt on those units, and just to give them a little bit more time by themselves.
Can you, with that youth hunt, can you help explain Hunter Orange and how that applies? We received quite a few comments on that.
Yeah. So with any center fire rifle general season hunt, with very few exceptions, you have to wear Hunter Orange. So this one obviously isn't an exception. If you're hunting archery at this time, because there is an overlapping general season any weapon hunt, you are currently violating the law if you're not wearing Hunter Orange.
I'm asking the question because someone brought this up. Limited are once in a lifetime hunts. Are once in a lifetime hunters required to wear
No
orange? So they are also, some of those are also going on during that youth bowl, correct?
Yes, but they are exempted from Hunter Orange. So there are certain hunts and certain hunt types that have exemptions, and we could. I mean, they're in the rule, but I don't remember all of them, but I can get any of them that we have questions on.
The reason I ask is there is a lot of questions, and we had comments from people ask. When we get into the comment, we can bring up more, but it was having to do with, is Hunter Orange required, and safety questions. And it is pretty, when you have so many different hunts going on, we also have a fall bear hunt that, we have so many things going on, who wears orange and who doesn't. And it might be for another meeting, but I think that's something that possibly could be addressed because there is a lot of confusion. And I think if someone's so for some of your COs, trying to determine what tag that person has and why that person in the same canyon doesn't have to wear orange and this person does causes confusion. Does that make sense?
It does, Justin. Honestly, we've tried to go through and clarify this. We made a rule change, it was a few years back, that made the delineation easier because it was harder before. The way it's in state code that you have to wear hunter orange, right? Center fire hunts have to wear hunter orange. And then in state code, it gives the wildlife board the ability to make some exceptions. And that's what's happened over time. There are a few hunts where it's not required. On CWMUs, it's not required. Once in a lifetime, it's not required. So there are a few times where that hunter orange isn't required in the field. What I would say is, if it's a truly a safety and concern issue for you, a field, and you don't have to wear it because of the hunt type, you still can. Like, nobody's going to stop you. So if you have a question about it, put it on.
All right. Any other questions?
Kobe, this is Randy. Just a quick question. Last year, we extended the bow hunt and it ended up overlapping with the youth elk hunt. And we knew that at the time, but for me, I think sometimes there's unintended consequences. And I've had a number of people talk to me about this. And I know I received some emails and I know there were some comments in the feedback forms as well. What aren't we seeing on this? It makes me nervous to start messing with season dates and stuff. What are our unintended consequences by doing this?
I think that one of the consequences is that anytime you have weapon type overlap, you end up with some negative impacts for one group of hunters or another, right? Because you're hunting differently. If you're hunting elk with a rifle, you're hunting differently than you are with a bow. Your distance requirements, the way that you hunt, and so obviously there's some conflict there. When this passed, this was a proposal that came through the public process from the public, got supported all the RACs, and then it passed. And it passed as a complete overlap, a full 9-day overlap. When it got to the board, understanding both sides, and there may be some conflict, it was adjusted to a 5-day overlap. So there was still some time for those youth hunters the second weekend to have on their own, have in the field. And when it passed at the board, the recommendation was let's leave this alone for 2 years to get it exactly what you're asking, Randy. And that is, let's have a couple years worth of data on this, and then we can give that to the elk committee and let them make a decision on whether or not we want to keep this and keep doing this, or if we want to move those dates back. The rationale for it is simple. There was frustration from the archery community that they don't get the peak of the rut anywhere on limited entry or anything else. And they just asked, just give it to us on general season. We know there's some overlap. We'll be respectful. Funny enough, the complaints that I've had have been from the archers, which kind of wanted to give them your number. But anyway, so the complaints that we got were primarily from the archery community of overlapping weapon type. But that's the idea, is let's run it one more year and get some good data. And if we want to keep this, we do. And if not, we change things again.
And I like that. Leave it alone for a couple of years just to see what's going on. But that's just comment. Thank you.
I know it came up in Central. Can you speak to the option of making this a multi-year, where we aren't reviewing these season dates year after every single year, if we can go into a multi-year plan?
Yeah, so for a lot of species, we set season dates for multiple years, and that is very possible for big game as well. We've over the, and I said this exact same thing last night, but we've been really, really flexible and fluid in big game for about the last 7 years, adjusting things, changing things, adding new hunts. And that's like ultimate flexibility, which we all like. But the one thing the ultimate flexibility doesn't provide is great consistency. in data, great consistency in how we apply, great consistency for our hunters that depend on things every year and come back and say, what changed? Why did this change again? So the truth is, season dates are one of the things that we could look at and set a hunt structure for multiple years. Colorado does it for 5, right? New Mexico sets not only hunt structure, but permit numbers for 4. So it's definitely something that we would support exploring, and we could make it happen.
Any other questions from members of the RAC? Are there any questions from anyone in the public who is present at this time? All right, we're going to go to the public comment at this time on this item. We're trying to help one of our RAC members who is attending virtually. He's having some technical difficulties, so I caught Ben off guard. So, but at this time we'll have the public feedback. We just went from questions from the public. I actually followed the order, and now
You did, I know. That really confused me. Now we're really close to a quorum tonight, so I just want to make sure we got that extra member online. So sorry, I was a little distracted. So the question that was asked to the public was, which best describes your position regarding the recommended big game season dates? We had 22 total votes. This is another item we didn't have a lot of extra discussion like we did on the previous item. Of those 22 votes, we had 9 that were strongly agreed, 7 somewhat agreed, 2 neither agreed nor disagreed, 1 somewhat disagreed, and 3 strongly disagreed.
Okay, thank you. Now at this time, we're going to go to the public comment period. And so we are going to first ask for, first card I have is Tim Giles. If there's any other cards that haven't brought forward, if you'd bring him at this time. Tim, would you please, is Tim here and would he come forward?
Well, I wish I had the perfect answer for all this. And I don't know how all the hunts overlap and how they affect each other. But what I thought was just do a late general season archery hunt for like November. Excuse me. And that would spread a little bit of the hunting pressure over, break it up a little bit. So that was just a thought I had.
Okay.
So.
All right, thank you. All right, Ross Worthington again on.
Thanks again. Would be relatively quick. I just comment on first year, the changes with the dates around the archery and the Youth Any Bowl. Didn't even realize it till this year. There's things I like, obviously things we don't, but with that date getting pushed back, direct impact to me and some others that I know of. It's a hunt I spent a lot of time with my daughter on. We used to take that first week, and without even realizing or thinking about it, hunt started on Saturday and it was back to school on Monday. And then it becomes hard for them to miss school and, you know, different things like that. So I know there's another year trial and then to go from there, but just as far as comment on things as they look at, I'd love to still see possibly that earlier week. And then the only other comment to go with on the youth hunt, love the opportunity, got a benefit with my own daughter with that. The 2 days, love that recommendation to extend. would love to maybe see that late season youth come back that used to have. I don't know why that went away and why they changed that. But I know there used to be a later season. But it was also interesting. I didn't think that youth hunt would have much of an impact on archery hunters. And we personally had 3 situations where I was surprised, changed the behaviors when gunshots started going off. And we actually had one bull in particular that we had Colin coming in and didn't know there was a youth hunter nearby, and there was shot fired, from behind us at that bull. So it was a little interesting in what happened. They didn't know we're there because we, anyways, but just interesting in how that came about. But otherwise, love everything. Appreciate it.
All right. We have one last comment that I didn't see he had additional ones on it. So we'd ask Troy from Sportsmen for Fish and Wildlife.
Troy Justice, Sportsman, Fish and Wildlife. We support the division's recommendations on this. Thanks.
Okay. All right. That is all the comments we have on the item from the public. Now we'll turn the time to RAC for comments.
This is Matt Clark. I mean, I guess I support the archers having the extended season, but I also would like to see the youth have a little bit of time without that pressure in the woods. So I would support extending the youth a couple of days, like the Central Region did.
I like that as well. Any other comments? Entertain a motion.
If there are no further comments, I would make a motion that we accept the proposal, but extend the youth hunt through the following Tuesday, from Sunday to Tuesday, to give them an extra couple of days.
Okay, so we have a motion to accept the proposal as presented and to add an additional, was it 3 days or additional 2 days to the youth hunt to extend it till Tuesday. That motion was made by Matt. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
And I have a second from Brad. Any discussion on this motion? Having none, we'll call for a vote. Brad?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Jamie's not here. Nikki?
Yes.
Emily, are you back with us?
She's on the phone.
She's on the phone. Her vote? While we're waiting for that? Yes, got it. There we go. Matt?
Yes.
And Randy?
No.
No? Okay.
No.
All right. Motion passes again 7-1 with one no, which was Randy. Randy, would you give us the reason for your vote, please?
I just don't like changing the dates. We can go more than 1 year without changing dates to see what the effects actually are.
Okay. Hopefully everyone's still there.
They're there. I'm sorry.
They're there, just a screen out. Okay. We'll now go to agenda item number 9. We wait for the screens to come up. I hope everyone is present. We'll have Chad Wilson, the Public and Wildlife and Private Lands Coordinator, is here. This time, questions to members of the RAC. If you have any questions for Chad concerning this proposal on CWMU's and Landowner permits. Do we have our members who are joining us virtually. I see Nikki. Are you able to hear us? Are you guys there?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay. Screen's just blurred, so they're all there. Okay, we're good. All right. Okay. So any questions for Chad from members of the RAC concerning this? Questions from the public?
I'm sorry, Justin. I had to change locations. I'm in a hunting camp and it's getting noisy. So this is on CWMU. We have Chad with the CWMUs, correct?
Yes, we're at the question period at this time.
So this is just to lay a foundation, Chad. Would you please explain the term, and now I'm going to miss it because I got excited trying to shuffle around a little bit. The reasonable boundary, I think it was, when you're establishing boundaries on CWMUs.
Yeah, I think it's enforceable boundary. Is that what you're referring to?
Thank you. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So it'd just be a lot of times that's going to be like a road or a ridge or just something that is easily identifiable by the hunters. Yeah.
Okay. And then what regulations or criteria, if any, is used with when there's public land inside a CWMU?
The criteria that we use to determine whether it is or not?
Yeah, whether to accept it. Why is there ever any, and and none of this is directed at you, but why do we ever have, and I know there's good reasons, but why do we accept renewal or new applications that have public land in them?
Yeah, so one is an enforceable boundary. So if we feel like the inclusion of it helps us be able to enforce that boundary, then that's one of the reasons that we can allow that to be in there. If they're not accessible or landlocked, then that would be another reason that we allow that public land inside. And a third one is if it helps us meet our management practices.
Okay. Now, and I apologize. There were some maps and it actually made me laugh. I watched the central unit yesterday. They had maps that I can't find, but they brought up specific examples that I wanted to bring up as well.
I've got those maps. Yeah.
Do you have those? Okay.
Yeah.
Could you bring up have two different ones in mind? The
Riverview?
And I can't tell you the River Ranch there in Box Elder. Oh, did I get the name wrong? Dang it.
we know what you meant.
Okay, so I'm just going to go on a bit of a diatribe because this is one of my main issues. So like this, and I do not know these people. I've never hunted out there in their CWMU. I was going through when the packet came out, I looked at the renewals, and one of the things I looked at was CWMUs that had a large amount of public land in them. Okay, this one has the highest that I saw. I might have missed somebody, but I believe this is the highest. That's almost 14,000 acres. And if you look at it, the boundary there, the red line's the boundary. That's the boundary of the CWMU. There's not a big block of private land in there. The biggest block is that cross up at the top. And then the trade out land down below that they have, the trade out land, I believe, is in purple or pink, excuse me, down there. So they're trading that out, correct, to offset what's included within their boundaries. Is that correct, Chad?
Partially offset, yeah.
To partially offset, okay. So now this is me just trying to explain my my take and my thought on these. To me, that's unacceptable. Okay, if you don't know this area, all that trade out land, all that is public accessible right now and can be hunted and is hunted. We're not getting anything out of this as far as the public goes. I know there's in the note there's one extra elk tag for the first year. Then it goes to the 90-10 split, if I'm remembering my figures correct. I don't see the benefit to the public on this. And I know this is an extreme case. I know it's one of the older ones, but I don't see where the public benefits from this one because there's roads all through these areas. And someone can go in and hunt those public land parcels all day long. And so I have a problem or a concern with these types of CWMUs. Okay. Now, if I could show a good example, the Kazi, I forget the last name. It's the Kazi. It's not the Kazi Estates.
Kazi Springs.
Kazi Springs. Thank you. Okay, here's a great example of one. There's almost no public land inside their border. There is some, and it's landlocked, which is completely justifiable. But what they did here, I mean, this is a great partnership. And again, I don't know these people either, okay? But look at the trade out land here. If you're not familiar with this area, that pink along the right side of the border, that's Wheatgrass Canyon. There's a very popular trail there that people used to hike to get back and forth through that area without having to drop down this mountainside, get down to the private public land again before they come up against the other side. This is a great example of how they can and should be run. I have a really hard time with public lands inside CWMUs unless there's a clear justification and benefit to the public. This one, I think I would argue, is a clear benefit to the public. The other one, and again, I don't know them. I randomly looked at them, looking at the numbers. I'm not seeing a lot of benefit in those types of situations. And in cases where we have public land along the borders of a CWMU that's accessible, those should very rarely be included in the CWMU. This one happens to be a case in that situation, but it's very justifiable because of the trade out that they have here. So I just want to bring that up. I have very specific things in mind that I would recommend. I don't like having public land on borders that are accessible unless there's a defined benefit to the public. That's my diatribe. And that's more of a comment than a question, but I wanted to show some examples of these along the way. And Chad, please enlighten me. Things that I'm missing or I got wrong, please correct me.
So I'll just comment a little bit on Riverview. I believe the reason that one was included with so much public land is that it was to help us manage problems out there with depredation. So that's a little bit of the history of why that public land was included into that one. So it actually fits that third prong. But this is the reason why we brought these forward is this came up last year as well, and we were asked to look at these. And so every renewal that going from here going forward, that has public land in it, we're going to show you what the reasoning is, and also what the public benefit is. And is, I guess, speaking to whether you feel like there's a public benefit or not, we do use a permit calculator to determine that. But if it's felt like it's not a fair for the public, then we for sure can go back and look at those.
But and thank you on that. But like, let's go to my previous example though. I just forgot the name again. What was the one out in Grouse Creek?
Riverview
Ranch.
Why can I not remember that? So I'll be honest. If this is a depredation problem, that's what depredation tags are for. And on something like this, and I know, I mean, the last couple of years, I know I've been banging the drum on this for at least a couple of years. There just has to be, what can we do that there, in my opinion, there has to be tighter oversight in the public land that's in these. I have a very hard time saying that this river view, that benefits the public. One extra elk tag on a 90-10 split. I mean, it's not even a 50-50 split. It's a 90-10 split with over 40% of the land is public land. And the trade out land has no value because you can hunt that already.
Yeah, and just to comment on that, I guess, is a lot of these were done probably about 30 years ago, 25, 30 years ago. So moving forward, I don't know that how many new CWMUs have included public land for quite some time. It is something that we looked at. The rule states that if you are a CWMU and you got a variance, then that variance, you don't have to keep asking for that variance every renewal. And so it's, I guess, to use a term, grandfathered in is probably the best way, but that's not to say that we can't look at these, that we can't go back and see if the rationale and the justification of why it was put in and why it has the public land is still valid. A lot of these, when they were set up, we didn't have Onyx or the other online mapping tools that we have now. So yeah, I think it's something that as a division we could look at. The Central Region RAC last night talked about having us review those a year before the renewal. So there's a recommendation from the CWMU Advisory Committee on what to do with those, and I think that would be an appropriate thing to do. And whether it passes RACs and boards, it's something that I plan on doing.
I have a question about that. So tonight are there 18 up for renewal?
I think it was 18.
So let's say that this RAC decides, I mean, I know it's ultimately going to go to the board, but we could literally pull the rug out from underneath of them and say denied. They're counting on it. They have tags in place. I mean, ultimately the RACs and the board ultimately has a decision that they could end, their CWMU. My question would be, is it feasible to do what the Central RAC did to give us, again, more time? Basically, we're given this agenda item, all these things that are on our agenda, that everything that we're dealing with today, and then this is added in there and it doesn't get the attention that it needs. I think the Central RAC really hit the nail on the head by asking for more time to be able to go and it also gives the Riverview Ranch and someone else a time to say, hey, this isn't looking good for you. Maybe there's something that you could do differently. And I think public land, in CWMUs is a hot topic. And I think that, I think those things need to change, but I think it needs to be, I think we could do it in a way that's fair to everyone. And so do you think that would help would benefit the public and our CWMU operators to put more time in front of it?
Yeah, I absolutely. The way I see this playing out is we usually have our CWMU Advisory Committee meetings February, March timeframe. The way I see it playing out is that we bring all the renewals that are renewing that summer to that committee and going through all of them with public land and getting the input from operators at that point, getting the input from our biologist, and seeing where that lands. And then by the time that they put in that summer, they'll know what the recommendation of that advisory committee is. And at that point, they can decide to, the division would have a recommendation, the advisory committee would have a recommendation, and at that point, they can decide whether they want to still try to keep that public land in or not. And if they decide to keep it in and the division is opposed, then it would be a split recommendation. And then when it comes to the board or to the RAC and the board in November, December, I mean, that gives it more than 6 months that it's been analyzed and reviewed. That's kind of the way I see it playing out going forward.
And I have one also, but go ahead.
Chad, I sit on that committee. I think that's a fabulous idea to bring that to us in advance so we'd have a chance to review it. My question to you is this, especially with the Riverview Ranch, you use the term grandfathered in. What flexibility do we have there? Is that for perpetuity? I mean, that's it forever grandfathered in? Is it ever subject to review?
Yeah, I mean, the variance is grandfathered in, but I think every 3 years it renews, right? When it renews, I think we have opportunities.
So we have some
to discuss
flexibility.
it. Yeah, absolutely.
Because this is one that would be a big red flag.
Yeah.
From a discussion standpoint.
Maybe both Mike and Chad could help us. Will you, even for me and for everyone out there, this CWMU Advisory Committee, we kept hearing about it from the Central. I'm hearing about it. Help explain who makes up that committee. What is it comprised of? Who is in it?
Yeah, so there's CWMU representative, there's sportsman representative, landowner representative.
There's CWMU operators that are actually on the committee.
Yeah, ferry, legislative, at large. So it's a pretty, I think it's 8.
Yeah.
Put me on the spot, but 7 or 8 people, but it's got a variety of different people and different representation.
And the theme that we're sharing here tonight about the concern over public land being, consumed with inside of a CWMU is a very hot topic for us as well. We get the RAC recommendations, we hear those things, and it's a concern for those that are on the oversight committee. So we're paying attention to those things as well.
This is Matt Clark. I guess I'd like to cut in here and play devil's advocate a little bit. I'm looking at this Riverview Ranch map. And to Randy's point, I certainly get what you're saying, but how are you going to access any of those checkerboards? I mean, you can't cut corners. I'm not seeing how any public hunter could get access to those sections.
So like I said, I do not know this operator, but I know that area. There's a ton of roads in there. And those private pieces that are in that trade, that pink land, it's not agriculture, it's not fenced, and it's not posted. So you can hunt it.
So the pink squares are not equivalent, in your opinion?
Oh, absolutely not, because I can go hunt that right now. And in the trade they're trading out land that I can already go hunt on. Now, could that property owner go in and start putting alfalfa field on it or fence it and post it? Absolutely, they could. And then I couldn't go on it. But right now, that land's not posted, or the vast majority of it. And there's roads all through that area. There's roads all through the CWMU, and there's roads all through that trade out land.
Thank you.
I think there's probably some more comments versus questions. So I want to, is there any more questions before we go into the comment period for Chad? All right. Yeah, there will be. Give me 1 second. So I wanted to make sure that there's no more questions from both members of the RAC present and those online. We'll still have more time to discuss this during the comment period, but now we'll go to the public. If you have a question, now is your time to come forward, state your name, and ask the question.
Name's Ross Worthington. Question just on the CWMU. You've talked about it in years past, how the tag allocation, normally it's a 90-10, but I think there's another way in which that allocation can be set up. And I guess in addition to that, is there any way to change that tag allocation in a situation like this where there's so much public land where there can be some flexibility where it's to keep it open, the public gets more access where we're giving up so much land in that situation?
Yeah, so for deer and elk, it's a 90, there's a 90-10, 85-15, 80-20, 75-25, and then corresponding antlerless permits accordingly. So if they choose the 90-10 split, then 100% of those tags go to the public. If they chose the 75-25, then it'd be a 50-50 split on the antlerless. So that's kind of their options. Pronghorn and moose is a 60-40. It's really not negotiable. And to answer that, I think we could come with, and those are minimums. So if it's a 90-10, the public never drops below that 10%. They always get the first tag. But I think we would be open to any arrangement if there was a way that we could say, yeah, because of this, like for example, on this one, if Riverview's like, okay, yeah, people don't like that we're just given one tag every 3 years, we're willing to give X amount, then yeah, I think we could enter that agreement with them.
Any other questions for members of the public that are here? All right, we don't have any comments from any of the public that are here. So let's go ahead and hear from Ben as far as the public feedback from the presentations that they watched online.
Great, thanks. And it sounds like Emily's back online too, so I think we're in good shape. We had 10 total survey responses for this item. 0 strongly agreed, 0 somewhat agreed, 6 neither agreed nor disagreed, 3 somewhat disagreed, and 1 strongly disagreed. This item did have a little bit of commentary. You guys are tracking on the public sentiment, just like Mike Lauder mentioned, so was the CWMU community. Some comments about public lands incorporated inside the CWMU boundaries, and some discussion about changing public permit allocations in CWMUs. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Now we'll hear comments from members of the RAC this time.
Hey, could I ask Chad, could I ask you one more question? I apologize. I'll frame it as a comment if you want. Could you pull up your maps? Could you pull up your maps and show us the double cone, CWMU? I apologize. You already took your computer away.
Yeah, double cone did not renew this year, so I don't have like a nice map like that.
Oh, don't you? Okay, then never mind. I was thinking that was it's listed as a renewal on the spreadsheet.
Yeah.
So the spreadsheet's just wrong.
Yeah, I'm not sure where that's at, but there's a spreadsheet with all of the permits from all the years, but yeah, double cone renewed last year.
Okay, all right. That was just at the bottom of the packet that was sent out to all the RAC members.
I called and talked to Chad for a bit today, and we had a really good discussion, and a lot of my questions or concerns were related not only to CWMUs, but to LOAs. I read through the statute that governs LOAs, and it's really ambiguous and hard to understand, so I called Chad to see if he could answer those questions. But my comment really is that I think the sentiment of public land being included in either one is a common concern. I think the board understands that. I think that we all do, and maybe sometimes I think we're beating a horse that's already dead. But Chad assured me today and said that the committee is looking at not only these issues and a lot of rule changes that they would like to make in both the CWMU plan or rules and in the LOA rules. So I know that I feel comfortable that they're working towards these better solutions. The only comment that I would add to that is in my opinion, and it's just mine, access to me is more important than a permit. So I would hope that they would look at more along the lines of public access to that public land rather than trading it for a one-person permit. I look at what benefits more people than just the one single permit or two.
I have a comment also kind of similar to that. Since the inception of the CWMU PHU unit, a lot has happened. And we've been going status quo now for 30 years, and there's been some tweaks here and there, but I really think we need to evaluate the value of wildlife has gone up, tremendous since they began. It doesn't take, that being said, also the value of what these landowners are providing to public also. It's a great program. They are feeding, a lot of the animals are on their property. It's helping. And I think that the CWMU program's a great program, but I feel like that it's time to really reevaluate tag allocations, how they're doing them. I think that we really need to think about the public and the benefit of, for this Riverview, for example, we're looking at the checkerboard of the private ground that they have. They have a lot of ground there, but they can't meet the requirements because it's not contiguous. So they're attempting to bring in the public ground. Well, what we need to decide, and I don't know what is the value for them to have this CWMU. Obviously it profits them. That's why they're trying to do that, and that's fine. But why can't we look at it if they have 40% of their property is public ground, then 40% of your tags could be public. I don't know if that's the number, but why are we really should look at how we're allocating these tags. In northern Utah, if I remember right, 87% of northern Utah region is private ground. Now, not all of that property is involved in CWMUs, but a large portion of it. It's a biological nightmare for our biologists because we're trying to manage buck to doe ratios. I know it's another topic, but we're trying to manage buck to doe ratios on our public, and with these CWMUs, obviously the pressure's down, the numbers are a lot higher. So what happens is we put more permits on public ground in small areas that we have. The small amount of public ground that we have in this state gets hammered, and it has to do with the number of animals that are on this private property. I just really think that it needs to be evaluated, and that this entire program needs to be revisited and look at ways that we can continue to help everyone involved. I mean, don't get me wrong, our landowners, we're appreciative. I recognize that they're doing good things. The program's great, but I think when we're looking at tag allocations, how we're putting tags out there, we're looking at point creep. I think there's some answers that can be found in the CWMU program. The number of tags that they're putting out, we're constantly trying to find ways to allow more permits in public ground, but I think we might be overlooking things a little bit. Maybe it's not everyone, maybe 1 year a CWMU is required to have one extra state hunter and it could rotate through. I think there's a lot of things that would also help with the perception of CWMUs and benefit everyone. And that would be my comment.
Yeah, this is Matt Clark again. I'd like to make a comment. This came up at the Central Region meeting yesterday. I mean, if we look at this Riverview map in particular, I mean, let's say that Riverview is a deer CWMU. I mean, they have the rights on this land to deer tags, but nothing else. I mean, you can camp on that land, you can hunt small game on that land, you can hunt elk on that land, you can hunt anything other than what they have the permit for. I mean, we're not transferring this land to these people. We're allowing them to control specific hunt tags on that unit. And this is probably something, and Kobe can probably speak to this, that the DWR has done not the greatest job at communicating. But just because this land is in that CWMU, it's not off limits to the public. The public still has access to that land with the road system that's there, and they can do anything other than hunt what this CWMU has tags for. In other words, this landowner cannot keep people from that land other than for this specific hunt type that they have.
And Matt, I'm glad you clarified that because you're 100% right. But what if I want to hunt elk out there? I was actually out there antelope hunting this year. I saw a monster 6-point, not too coincident. And again, coincidentally, I ran across Riverview from the RAC packet information. Monster 6-point elk, a couple miles from this CWMU. So we are taking away access for those specific hunts. But you're right. We're not taking away access for anything else other than that hunt. But we are taking access.
So it may be more of an issue that we need to make sure that if we're allowing this on a renewable basis, that we're actually getting a fair trade out of it. And I think a lot of these that Chad presented, I think the public is coming out ahead. It's certainly possible that there are units where the public is not coming out ahead, and maybe we should look more closely at those.
That recommendation is to make motion for that. Like Chad's talking about, the committee, if there's public land in a parcel in a CWMU, committee should be looking at it and seeing if the public is being treated fairly for the trade out, if that land needs to be in it. And if it doesn't need to be in it, it should be taken away. Just to give them enough land to have a CWMU is not justification for having public land in it, in my opinion.
Just follow up to one of my comments, something I forgot. Randy actually mentioned it earlier, Causey Creek. I used to patrol Causey Creek. I patrolled it for 8 years for the landowner, the CWMU operator. And I found it extremely difficult to restrict people from coming down the Bluebell Trail and accessing Elk Ridge and going down Wheatgrass Canyon. And so he and I were at odds pretty much every year because I would allow people to come down the Bluebell Trail and access as long as they didn't cross that ridge. And it's a great example of now a trade that's been made and gives those people the legal access and a working relationship between a CWMU and the state. As long as it is in the public's best interest and in the favor of the public, I think that you guys are looking at that, and I think that that's where the focus needs to be, along with understanding the importance and a benefit to those CWMUs for our overall game management and opportunities. It's property that we would not be able to access. No one would be able to access if it weren't for CWMUs and the state having those programs in place. So I think that, again, Chad, I think you're doing a great job. I think that your focus is right. We support you. I do.
Any other comments? Would it be appropriate to read that motion from yours? Yeah. I hope we had a lot of discussion, things came up, there was a lot of them. I mentioned that for any of our RAC members that had an opportunity, anyone that watched the Central RAC, I think they did a pretty good job. They probably went into a few more of the specific units, and I don't feel like we need to. I think that we all understand kind of where we're at as far as comments and how we feel. So I would entertain a motion, and I would ask whoever, when we do receive a motion, that you would try to match what we've been discussing. Yes.
The one comment that I take away from this that I think made a lot of sense about the information being provided to the CWMU Oversight Committee. So if I made the motion to accept the plan with the inclusion of sharing properties that encompassed private lands within the CWMU to be looked at by the CWMU Oversight Committee, but we would accept the plan with that addition in its entirety as presented, with the addition of allowing the CWMU Oversight Committee to have the opportunity to really dive into this by having the information, like you said, in the timeline in which you gave, Chad, I think would really help that committee to really sink their teeth into this.
So if we do that, they're renewed for 3 years, correct? Is there a way to considering the time and where they're at, is there a way to allow that for 1 year?
Probably not the way the CORs are set up, right? Because those permits are sold on those CWMUs.
Yeah, it'd be difficult. I mean, we can change them every fall. And I'm trying to think if, I guess the issue is once they've passed, then it's a $450 COR fee for 3 years. And if a year later you yank it, we're probably not going to refund. So essentially that's $150 a year.
So what gives us teeth to make changes and address some of these where the public's not getting a fair shake?
Well, if we do it beforehand, so if we would have taken these specific ones out this spring to the advisory, I mean, we talked about it, right, in the advisory committee, and that's why that packet was put together. But if we would have brought these specific ones and it would have gone through that process, then tonight we could make that a clear decision. Whereas if we pass them tonight, and I'm not a process expert, but it seems like it'd be a little bit difficult in my mind
to revisit them,
to go back on them.
I think the way the current system is, it's pretty, I guess it would be presumptuous of them to assume, and I think that's exactly what happens. They're assuming they're never denied, and so they basically are selling tags assuming that they're constantly going to receive this. I mean, like I said, they're selling permits. Now, they don't know the exact number, but they got a pretty good idea. It'll fluctuate maybe 1 or 2 permits.
And the program as a whole is fabulous, right? And most of the guys are doing a wonderful job. These would be just case by case, small sample size type.
Yeah, and those permits are set for 3 years. So that's one thing that I realized this year that one thing I can do better is when I present my stuff is to present all 3 years. Like I gave you the first year, right? And you can see the permits for the first year of the renewal. Going forward, we're going to do all 3 years, so you can see everything that you're approving going forward. Usually those numbers are the same every year unless we've added an additional public permit on the first end.
Or the property has changed in size and grown, right? Incorporated more ground.
At that point in time, we would do a change application, and it would have to go, anytime we change permits off of that, it goes through a change application, which would go back through the RAC and board process. I could see potentially if you said we approve it, but it's going to be the public land ones are going to be revisited. Maybe that's a stipulation that you could put in. That would give some flexibility on these that we approved this year, is that those with public lands are going to be revisited next year with a determination. And in the spring, we could bring all the renewals for next year and the ones that we just renewed through that committee. I'd probably have to check on that to see if we can if we can do that process wise.
My comment was still, you're right, there's three years of permits, but there are 18 CWMUs that are renewing right now. Not deny this, but this close, I mean, we could do it. They're assuming that they're going to pass. I'm certain that even these ones that are renewing right now aren't telling their customers, hold on a minute, we don't know yet. And I don't want them to do that. I'm hoping that we get far enough ahead of that we can flesh out all these public land issues and stuff and let the CWMU committee help do that before it gets to here,
Yeah.
so that it doesn't happen. So anyway,
18 this year, right?
yeah, there's 18 this year.
And so how many is it per year, Chad? I mean, if we jumped on this now, I mean, we're going to have time to look at just about all of them in a 3-year program.
Yeah, I think there's about 30, if I remember right, about 30 CWMUs with public land in them. Now, we have a big year of renewals. I would assume that was last year, and I would assume that there was more that year than the other years. But I mean, I think we had about 8 this year, so we almost had a third this year. So if we got another third next year, it would.
So over a 3-year period of time, we could address this whole issue.
Yeah.
So we could take them just a chunk at a time for those that are coming up for review. If we got the information far enough in advance to review them prior to.
Yeah.
That would be the approach, I think would be the best approach.
And the other thing that I can do to help with that too is we have a CWMU operator training. And I'm actually going to be sending that out to them. It's a video this year. It'll be in person in February, but I'll send it out in a video just with a heads up. It's a mandatory training, so they all should receive that. And I can sit, in that training, say, if you have public land, it's going to be scrutinized, and be prepared. It may not pass with the public land in it, or it may not pass at all. So I can give them an extra heads up on that as well.
I'm going to invite Jim to come forward. He's ready to jump out of his chair. I can tell he's got something really good for
I've been
us.
standing back there for a minute. Jim Christensen, I'm the Northern Region Wildlife Manager. Just referring back to the Riverview Ranch CWMU and kind of the history behind that one. So back when elk first started coming into Box Elder County, the division formed a committee out there. And one of the reasons we have elk out there still today is because of the CWMU program. And it started with actually 3 different CWMUs along the Nevada border there. One of them being this, which is now the Riverview Ranch CWMU. That's something that just, I can't stress it enough to just think about the availability of elk and the consequences if we take the CWMUs out. We'll manage around however it goes. But part of that initial committee was that the landowners out there would allow elk if we could get properties enrolled in the CWMU program. Now, all 3 of those CWMUs did not have anywhere near 10,000 contiguous acres just because of the land ownership pattern out there. A lot of them own way more than 10,000 private acres across there, but there's no way to make it contiguous with the checkerboard pattern. And so the initial committee set it up that way. Still, the West Box Elder Elk Management Plan has it listed in there that we need to use CWMUs to the best extent possible in order to have elk out there, period.
The intent is not to take anybody out. We're not messing with anybody's livelihood. And if there's good reason, there's public benefit, they get a pass, right? I mean, you've cleared it up. I think Matt, Clark, sharing thoughts about things, it makes it more clear. And I think as long as we have a clear understanding, the benefit to the public exists, and here's why we can defend that. I don't think we're not going after those folks at all.
Okay. Thank you. And just one more thing too, with Riverview specific, they used to be, they pulled about a third of that unit out of the CWMU. So the Tom's Cabin Creek now is the southern border. All that property that is now enrolled in trade land plus the BLM ground used to be enrolled in the CWMU as well. But the CWMU come to us looking to trade some of that and redraw that boundary. So,
and again, my comment would be, I like the explanation. I just want to address and see it addressed on tag allocation and how we can make it fair for all involved. If it means more public tags or whatever it is, I think it can be done. Yeah, so I think we got comments, and I think Mike's going to take a shot at a,
Okay, I'll make a motion that we accept the plan as presented with the caveat that we will take, or we will start a 3-year program to evaluate CWMUs that encompass public property.
Could I make a comment on that? And Mike, I like it, but what could you do something very specific, like Chad said, review process 1 year early so that we'll know, so that there's plenty of time to review all the WMUs that need to be reviewed, so that we're not pulling the rug out from people at the last minute.
Okay. Randy, you were breaking up, but I think you said something about 1 year early to provide time to review the CWMU. Is that correct?
Yeah. Can you hear me any better now?
Yeah, just a bit.
Okay.
So
I'll try one more time. If we start the review of any CWMUs with public land 1 year prior to renewal.
Okay.
That gives everyone time to look at things, see if they're okay, or make changes that are needed.
Okay, here we go again, boys. Do I have to amend it? Well, I don't have a second. This thing's still floating around out here. I feel like Covey Jones untangling stuff up here. All right. I make a motion that we accept the proposal in its entirety, with the caveat of receiving information 1 year prior to the renewal of any CWMUs, that we will address any problems within a 3-year period. Did I miss that?
I will second that motion. This is Matt Clark.
Oh, yeah, of those CWMUs that encompass public land. Thanks, Matt.
give me 1 second as I write this down, and then we'll repeat it. Let's hear yours.
It's like marbled.
Mr. City Councilman.
My first one.
That hurt. It was. I know when I deleted it.
Did you really?
I know, yeah. Motion by Michael Otter, seconded by Matt Clark to accept the division's recommendation with the caveat of receiving information 1 year prior to renewal for CWMUs that include public lands within its boundaries.
Nailed it.
Boom.
All right. Any discussion concerning this motion? Seeing none, we will call for a vote. Brad?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Jamie? Not there. Nikki?
Yes.
Emily?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
And Randy?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you for your time and everyone that is here for your work. You have a comment before we suggest?
Yeah, before we adjourn, Covey, has there been any progress on the requirement of a hunter to check after a $850,000 shot or yard shot?
If I'm completely honest, Kevin, I've turned that over to law enforcement. I've asked them to look into that for me because that really is more on the enforcement end. We talked about it a bit ago, but I don't have an update for you. So I don't know if anybody here from law enforcement does have an update on that, but.
I know that Dave and I have talked about it some as well, and then some possibilities of looking at other states, what they do, specifically Wyoming.
David Beveridge, Lieutenant for Northern Region Law Enforcement. I am happy to look into that and move that forward if that's what you would like to do.
Well, this was from several, a year or
Yeah,
so
it's a
ago.
very reasonable request. And what it is just a request to go and check. It's just more on the enforcement end than it is on the management end. So Dave and I will have a conversation with Wyatt about it as soon as he gets done with his elk hunt.
Okay, thank you. And one other thing, my son and I were on the horseback ride up Wheatgrass Canyon 4 weeks ago, a month ago. It is horribly overgrazed. Cash is in a bad situation anyway, but it is just horribly overgrazed by the cattle.
Are you talking about the public land or the private land?
No, it's public. It's wheat.
And the good news is?
I'm sorry, not wheatgrass. Bunch grass up Logan Canyon.
Okay.
Bunch grass. I'm sorry.
The good news is
I was
that neither of
confused.
those are me. So
Yeah. So
Paul, message received.
yeah, we never come across an elk track, a deer track, plenty of water. There was water running down all the creeks, but the cattle had overgrazed that horribly.
We're aware of that. The Forest Service is aware of that and is taking action right now, actually.
Yeah, and just in defense of our federal partners, they get a lot of pressure for a lot of uses on the land, and I know they do the best they can. So, and they address these issues when they find them.
Okay, as we come to the end of the meeting, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, everyone.